Dina, Brooke, what took you so long? Dinner is getting cold. Aunt Miller's voice made the girls look up from their laptops, reminding them of the guests. Let's go. We can continue later. There's still so much interesting stuff, whispered Brooke to her sister and pulled Dina by the hand. You'll see, I'll definitely marry a millionaire, and I'll have exactly the house I just showed you. Well, dreaming doesn't hurt, sighed Dina. The day seemed to drag on terribly for the girl. The beginning of March didn't bring warm weather, and the gloomy sky had been spoiling the mood for almost 2 weeks. Dina felt the same way. The endless reports, plans, and documents had become incredibly tedious. She had been working as an accountant at one of the city's largest wood processing plants for 5 years. She joined Drift Holdings right after university and had no plans to change jobs. The salary was satisfactory, and the team was good. Dina would turn 28 in February. Many of her classmates were already married with children, but she wasn't in a rush. Besides, she didn't have a boyfriend. Instead of clubs, she preferred quiet evenings with an interesting book. Dina had always been a modest, intelligent, and remarkably smart girl for her age. Perhaps that was what hindered her from arranging her personal life. She didn't have any close friends either. Brooke, on the other hand, was completely different. She turned 20 in January. She loved dressing brightly, partying with friends at clubs, and spending time carefree and joyfully. Like her older sister, Brooke decided to study economics and was currently in her 3rd year. However, unlike Dina, she approached her studies lightly and carefree. Brooke was a smart girl but believed that education wasn't the most important thing in life. She often called her sister a killjoy. The sisters lived together with their Aunt Miller and Uncle Gary. It happened that the girls' parents died early. Their mom fell ill when Dina was just 10. She passed away a year later. Doctors couldn't help her. 3-year-old Brooke barely remembered her mom. After the death of his beloved wife, the father started drinking. His weak heart couldn't bear the separation, and 2 years later, he also passed away. He simply went to sleep one evening and never woke up. 13-year-old Dina and 5-year-old Brooke were left orphans. Aunt Miller, their mom's sister, took them in. Gary didn't mind. Since Miller and Gary never had children of their own, they treated the adopted girls as their own. Miller and Gary's small brick house stood on the outskirts of the city. In school, the sisters did well, although Brooke's behavior was always troublesome. Dina was never caught in any mischief, but Brooke was often found smoking, getting into fights with boys, or skipping classes. Despite their different personalities, the sisters were close and spent a lot of time together. Dina took care of her sister, and the 8-year age difference showed. In the kitchen, Aunt Miller set the table for dinner. The fragrant soup was served in beautiful dishes, and the croutons and fresh vegetable salad looked very appetizing. Mmm, how delicious, exclaimed Brooke, taking her seat at the table. Is there pie too? Yes, I made your favorite with apples, replied Miller, pouring hot soup into the plates. Not a minute passed before silence fell over the table. Miller lovingly gazed at her husband and her nieces, who had become closer than family over the years. Oh, if only Zoe could see her beauties, thought the woman. Brooke resembled her father, being just as stubborn and mischievous. Bruce had been like that too. He was everywhere, the life of the party. Who would have thought that he would completely lose his taste for life after his wife's death? And the older, Dina, both in appearance and character, was just like her mother, calm, modest, hard-working. Oh, if only she could marry off the girls and spoil her grandchildren. Aunt Miller, thank you for dinner, Brooke repeated a second time, noticing that her aunt seemed lost in thought. What did you say, Brooke? Miller snapped out of her reverie. Already finished. 1 second. You're so thin. Not thin, but slender, Brooke corrected her aunt and disappeared behind the door. Dina sat quietly at the table, smiling as she listened to the conversation between her sister and aunt. After thanking her aunt for dinner, she wished her family a good night and went to her room. "Oh, our girls have grown up," sighed Miller, glancing at her husband. Gary also silently observed the girls. He didn't like that Dina spent so much time alone. "We should get Dina out for a walk somehow," he said. "Look at Brooke, always out with friends at clubs. And Dina just stays at home. She won't get married like this. Talk to her, Miller. Maybe she'll listen to you and start building her personal life." "I've said it more than once, but nothing helps. Our Dina doesn't like noisy parties. What can you do?" Miller shrugged and began clearing the plates from the table. "Maybe it's for the best," Gareth said, leaving the table. A few days passed. Spring was in the air, and the sun began to warm everything more strongly. On a Friday evening, Dina, as usual, stayed a bit late at work, trying to finish all her tasks for the day. It was already 8 p.m. when she gathered all the papers from her desk and neatly organized them on the shelves. Dina didn't like disorder, whether at home or at her workplace. Turning off the light in her office and locking the door, Dina left the office and headed to the bus stop. She had to wait for the bus for a long time. 15 minutes had already passed, and there was no sign of it. While standing at the stop, Dina noticed a girl staring at her. Turning to the stranger, Dina recognized her former classmate, Nicole Bryce. In the time they hadn't seen each other, Nicole had changed significantly. It was evident that she took great care of herself, trying to dress fashionably and stylishly. "Dina, it's been so many years," Nicole exclaimed, pleased with the encounter. "Nicole, you look fantastic," Dina complimented her. "It's hard to recognize you in the crowd now." "I try," sighed Nicole. "Time goes by, and the right match is elusive." "The right match?" Dina didn't immediately grasp what Nicole was referring to. "Why are we standing here and freezing?" Nicole asked. "Let's go to a cafe, have a seat, and catch up on the latest news." Dina thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to chat with her former classmate. They went to a cafe, chose a table by the window, and ordered a cup of coffee each. "I try not to eat after 6, Nicole confessed. "If you don't watch yourself, you can quickly lose your shape, and men love slender girls who take care of themselves." To be honest, Dina wasn't against grabbing a snack, but realizing that Nicole probably wouldn't understand, she decided to settle for a small cup of coffee. "Oh, you too. I see. Take care of your figure. Still as slender as ever," Nicole observed. "But you haven't learned to dress yet. Always in your business suits. Dina, you have something to show off. Any figure would envy yours." "I have no need for that," Dina replied. "And I didn't plan to go to any cafe today. I was just heading home from work." "Oh, I recognize the old Dina. You're incorrigible. Tell me, do you have a boyfriend?" Nicole inquired. Dina, not used to lying, silently shook her head. "Well," Nicole exclaimed, "Dina, you're such a beauty. You need to find a boyfriend urgently." "Oh, Nicole, it's you who are incorrigible. You never change. If you're so experienced in these matters, why aren't you married yet?" Dina asked. "You're right. I am truly incorrigible. But here's the problem. I don't want to marry an ordinary guy. I'll only marry a millionaire," Nicole declared. "A millionaire? Maybe you already have a candidate for the husband role?" Dina asked with a smile. "Candidates? Plenty of them. But a real millionaire? Not yet. But there will be one for sure," Nicole confidently stated, and winked at Dina. The girls spent about an hour in the cafe, sharing their lives and work stories. Dina learned that Nicole wasn't employed anywhere, living with her new boyfriend, who had a decent family business. From Nicole's account, Dina understood that the girl was not averse to marrying him. However, the guy was in no hurry to make her a proposal. Nicole earned her money through her small online store, which didn't bring in significant profits, but allowed her to dress decently and stay fashionable. Listen, let me introduce you to my Luke. He has a friend, Ethan, the owner of a fitness center, Nicole suggested. Thanks, Nicole. I'll handle this on my own. Dina declined and hurried home. The girls exchanged phone numbers and went their separate ways. Dina, where were you today? You stayed out so late. Miller questioned from the doorway. We were starting to worry. Don't bother my sister, Aunt. Brooke intervened. Finally, she stayed out somewhere. She lives like a nun. Work home. Homework. It's enough to drive you crazy. But seriously, where were you? Dina, did you meet someone? I didn't meet anyone, Dina said. I just ran into an old acquaintance. We sat in a cafe, chatted. Honestly, I'm very tired and want to sleep. Aren't you going to have dinner? Miller asked in surprise. Let me quickly warm up the dinner. No need, Aunt Miller. I have a headache, and I'm completely exhausted. I'll take a shower and go to bed. Dina refused and disappeared behind the door of her room. Dina took a shower and settled into bed. The conversation with Nicole lingered in her mind. Until now, she hadn't been overly concerned with her appearance, wearing what seemed comfortable and familiar. The talk with her old acquaintance made her see herself from a different perspective. Tomorrow is Saturday, a day off. I'll get up and tackle this issue first thing in the morning, Dina promised herself and drifted off to sleep. Saturday morning started as usual. At 9 a.m., Dina got up and headed to the shower. Aromatic smells wafted from the kitchen. Good morning, Aunt Miller. Dina greeted and sat at the table. Good morning. Sit down, Dina. I made pancakes. Miller began setting the table. Where's Brooke? Still sleeping? She asked, thinking it was time to wake up her sister. She left about an hour ago with a friend. Bought a gym membership. Says she'll work on her figure, Miller informed. In my opinion, she has a perfect figure even without all these fitness routines. Apparently, she's trying to become even more beautiful. She even refused pancakes. Dina, realizing she was on her fifth pancake, almost choked. She understood that her sister was watching her figure, adhering to a diet, and even joined a fitness club. And what was she doing? Thank you, Aunt Miller. It's all delicious. Dina thanked her aunt, trying not to offend the woman. Don't you want my pancakes either? She gestured. It's like you're conspiring against me. Was it all in vain, my effort? Bruce is on shift today. Who's going to eat all this? Why don't you offer them to the neighbors? I think they would be happy, Dina suggested. Miller folded more hot pancakes and went to the neighbors. Dina cleaned up the kitchen and disappeared behind the door of her room. The first thing that came to her mind was to call Nicole. Nicole, hi, are you still asleep? Dina asked. Not anymore, Nicole mumbled and yawned. Why aren't you sleeping? You said you had a day off today. I'm not used to sleeping in, Dina began. I believe you, always been like that. So, why are you calling? Do you have a question for me? Nicole inquired. No, I mean, yes. Dina didn't know how to articulate her request, regretting that she had called. So, is it a yes or no? Come on, tell me what happened, demanded Nicole. You said yesterday that you have an online clothing store. Can I come over today and you help me pick out something? Dina said. You want to make an order? Nicole exclaimed. Why didn't you say so? Let me send you what you can order. No need to come all the way here just for that. You're right, but Dina hesitated. I would also like you to help me choose suitable options. Advise me on something. That's no problem. Come over. Well, around 2, I'll be at home. Write down the address, said Nicole. Having noted down the address Nicole provided, Dina decided to browse the internet for fashion trends of the season. Half an hour later, she grew tired of it, picked up a book, and immersed herself in reading. Exactly at 12:30, she started getting ready to visit Nicole. Aunt Miller, I'll take a stroll with my old friend, she informed Miller. Is that the one you spent the whole evening with yesterday? Inquired the woman. Yes, it's Nicole Bryce. We didn't finish discussing everything yesterday. I'll visit her. Anything is better than sitting alone at home, said Dina. Exactly. Go ahead, dear, Miller rejoiced. Take a walk. Enjoy yourself. It's been a while since you've thought about old acquaintances, made friends. After giving her aunt a peck on the cheek, Dina left the apartment. Around 2, Dina arrived at the specified address and pressed the intercom button. They answered her call only on the 3rd attempt. Yes, I'm listening. A male voice awaited a response. Hello, is this apartment 54? Dina asked, suddenly thinking she had dialed the wrong number. Yes, and you must be here for Nicole, the man asked. Come on in. The apartment is on the 7th floor. In the stairwell, Dina caught her breath and pressed the elevator button. She hadn't expected that, besides Nicole, there would be an unfamiliar man in the apartment. But then again, Nicole had warned her that she had a young man she dreamed of marrying. Upon reaching the desired floor, the girl found the right apartment and noticed that the door was already ajar. She only had to push it slightly to enter the spacious hallway. Hello, she greeted hesitantly, seeing, instead of Nicole, a tall and handsome young man in the hallway, studying her with an inquisitive gaze. In the first second, Dina felt like she was drowning in the man's blue eyes. She couldn't utter a word, just stood there, silently looking at him, as if enchanted. Hi, Dina. Why are you standing at the doorway? Nicole's voice snapped Dina back to reality. Meet Luke, my fiancé. And this is Dina, my old acquaintance. And from today, I hope we'll become friends too. Pleasure to meet you, Luke replied and helped Dina take off her coat. Dina felt herself blushing. Luke, let's look through catalogs with Dina for now, and you put on the kettle. After finishing our business, we'll have some tea, Nicole suggested, leading Dina to her room. The girl noticed that Nicole's apartment, though small, was cozy and elegantly furnished. So, take a look, said Nicole, opening her computer. These are the fashion models that will be in trend this season. I think these should suit you. Nicole flipped through one page after another. Dresses, skirts, blouses, boots, coats, scarves, and gloves flashed before Dina's eyes. The abundance of information made her head spin. I've noticed you tend to wear more muted tones. You're young. Choose bolder colors. And, by the way, toss those frumpy and overly comfortable shoes. Look, these will suit you better than the rest. And take this dress. It will highlight your figure, Nicole advised. It was evident that she knew a thing or two about fashion and understood what she was talking about. Choosing a pair of shoes, a couple of dresses, a trouser suit, and a coat, Dina decided to stop, thinking it would be enough for the first time. That's excellent. Beautiful choices, Dina, praised Nicole. You'll be simply irresistible in these. Now, let's go have some tea. Luke must be getting bored there. Closing the laptop, Nicole pulled Dina by the hand, inviting her to the kitchen. Luke stood at the stove in an apron, preparing something. When he saw the girls, he turned around and greeted them with his splendid, white-toothed smile. Finally, I was starting to miss you. Did you do everything you planned? I've started making risotto. We just need to chop some herbs. Dina, you must try it. Dina looked at the young man and again couldn't find any words. He had a magical effect on her, making her forget about everything else. Yes, Dina, risotto is the only thing Luke knows how to cook. Nicole smiled. But the way he makes it is simply heavenly. Sit here, and Luke and I will sit across from you. Dina sat at the table and only then realized that her legs and hands were trembling. Trying to compose herself, she forced a smile and pretended that everything was fine. The risotto turned out to be genuinely delicious. Very tasty. Luke, where did you learn to cook like this? Dina asked. I won't lie. I really don't know how to cook. This is the only dish I can manage. Sylvester, my mom's old friend, taught me. He has his own restaurant. I used to visit him often. That's where I learned to make this risotto. I won't share the recipe. Sorry. Let it remain my secret," said Luke, looking at Dina again. His gaze sent shivers down her spine. She got up from the table and went to the bathroom. She wanted to see herself in the mirror and tidy up. But upon seeing her reflection, she realized that tidying up might not be enough. "I need to go to the hairdresser tomorrow and get a new hairstyle," she decided. "I can't stand these long locks anymore. Who do I resemble?" In the mirror, Dina saw a girl with a bewildered look. Several strands of hair stuck out, making her hairstyle look messy. At least that's how Dina perceived it now. She didn't want to show herself to Luke in this condition. But there was nothing she could do. Her new friends were waiting for her at the table. After quickly combing her hair, Dina left the restroom and joined the conversation. She tried to keep it together, smiled, and joked, but her heart was pounding. It was only 2 hours later that Dina left for home. She was relieved to leave her friend's apartment. She wanted to breathe in some fresh air and clear her thoughts. Luke kissed Dina's hand in farewell. To conceal her embarrassment, Dina rushed into the stairwell and pressed the elevator button. Dina could hardly remember what was discussed at Nicole's kitchen table. For some reason, she was preoccupied with another question. How long would Luke stay with Nicole? And how serious were they? In the cafe, Nicole mentioned her dream of marrying a millionaire. Apparently, Luke wasn't a millionaire. Did Nicole love Luke? Probably, she did. It was impossible not to love him. "Oh God, I'm going crazy soon," Dina told herself. As soon as she returned home, she locked herself in her room, lay on the bed hugging a large stuffed rabbit, and fought, sighed, and cried. She realized she had fallen in love. For the first time, she fell in love so deeply that just the thought of Luke made her cheeks blush and her head spin. "Luke, were you again at the club all night? You came back at 4 in the morning. Do you remember you have work today?" Luke's mother, Mrs. Dixon, bombarded him with questions. "Mom, let me sleep. Nothing will happen if I'm a bit late today," the young man replied, struggling to open his eyes, and glanced at the clock. 7:30 in the morning. 2 hours are enough for me to get myself together. And how long will this go on? What if you worked not with me but for yourself or in some other company? You would have been fired long ago for being late and neglecting your duties. Okay, I'll wait for you until 11. I'll call you exactly at 10. Don't turn off your phone." She fastened the buttons on her coat and left the apartment. Camilla Dixon was known as the Iron Businesswoman. She started her construction business 25 years ago and currently held a strong position in the industry. She raised her son on her own, divorcing her husband when Luke was only 2 years old. She realized she couldn't live with her weak-willed husband, completely forbidding him from communicating with their child. That's when she began her entrepreneurial journey. Luke seemed to inherit his father's character. Or maybe she spoiled him. The young man graduated from law school, started working with his mother, but felt no responsibility for the family business. At the age of 32, Luke still wasn't married. He indulged himself with friends at parties, drank, and gave no thought to the future. Mrs. Dixon recently turned 52 but looked much younger than her actual age. Slim, elegant, always tastefully dressed, she continued to captivate men. Many businessmen knew about her iron grip in the business world. The reputation of her construction company was impeccable, and many wanted to work with her, knowing that being around her could be both profitable and enjoyable. Mrs. Dixon settled at her desk, starting with sorting through her mail. She appeared focused on work, but her thoughts were on her son. That fool needs to get married. But to whom? Luke isn't worth marrying just anyone, she thought, going through papers. He's surrounded by cheap girls. He needs a calm, simple, and smart girl who can take care of him, ensure a family comfort. Where do you find such women these days? Most likely, there's some trash hunting him down. Only after the money from my company. I saw that Nicole, just an empty-headed gold digger. No, my son will marry only if I approve. Unnoticed, the clock hands crawled to 10 in the morning. Mrs. Dixon called Luke, who still couldn't lift his head from the pillow. Well, it's clear now. Luke is not working again today, nervously thought Mrs. Dixon, lighting a cigarette. I need to seriously start looking for a wife for Luke. This can't go on any longer. The woman reminded herself once again and left for the construction site. Hello, Dina. It's Nicole. Hey, friend. Nicole's call made Dina look up from her papers. Oh, Nicole. Hi, Dina said, continuing to study the documents. I've been calling you for the third time, and you're not picking up, Nicole said. Where are you now? At home? No. Come on. It's 11 in the morning. I'm at work, explained Dina. And what are you up to? Probably just woke up. Guessed it. Nicole chuckled. I still can't get used to your daily routine. How do you even live like this? Every day, except weekends, at work. That's just how I live. I can't be without work, Dina explained. For some reason, she felt uneasy. Dina understood that she and Nicole were completely incompatible. They were from different worlds. Carefree, cheerful Nicole, and serious, hard-working Dina. They were united only by one thing: the desire to get married. Dina bitterly realized that, since the day they met, another person united them: Luke, whom Dina had fallen in love with. But she would never admit it to her friend. Why am I calling you? Your order has arrived. Come to my place and pick it up. All right. I'll come around 7 in the evening and pick it up, said Dina, sighing heavily. She didn't want to go to Nicole. She regretted the whole idea with the new wardrobe and style. If not for that, she would have never met Luke and suffered from unrequited love. But what's done is done. She would have to go for the order anyway. The workday ended at 5, but as usual, Dina lingered with another report. However, she had to put aside the paperwork to go to her friend for the order. The road to her friend's home didn't take much time. In 30 minutes, she was at Nicole's place. She barely pressed the intercom button when the door opened, and Luke jumped out of the entrance. He didn't immediately notice Dina, crashing into her in a way that made her struggle to stay on her feet. Sorry. Oh, Dina. I'm sorry. The young man apologized, supporting Dina by the elbow. It's okay, she reassured Luke and looked at him with surprise. Why are you rushing out of the entrance like that? Can't you be more careful? Apparently not, Luke nervously replied. He apologized once again and headed towards his car. The black Toyota blinked its headlights a few times. Luke got behind the wheel and disappeared around the corner. Dina continued to watch him for another 5 minutes, not understanding anything. Remembering why she was standing at her friend's entrance, she buzzed the intercom. Nicole only answered on the second attempt. Dina realized that her friend was upset. Well, hello. Come in, Nicole said sadly, opening the door. Her hair was tousled, mascara streaked down her cheeks, and overall, she looked disheveled. Nicole, did you have a fight with Luke? I met him by the entrance, Dina asked, looking closely at her friend. Yes, that mommy's boy will get it from me, Nicole exclaimed. So what if he overheard my conversation with Leslie? What of it? Does he have to throw a tantrum? Tell me in detail what happened here, what you fought about. Dina continued to ask questions, for no reason at all. Luke came, opened the door with his key, and eavesdropped on my conversation with Leslie, Nicole replied. As you can understand, we were talking about him. I told her that I want to marry him, but I don't see any special prospects in him. He's a mommy's boy who hasn't achieved anything by the age of 30. Pottying with friends in clubs is what he does best. Did you tell all this to Leslie on the phone? Dina asked, surprised. Yes. And so what? I have no secrets from her. We've been best friends since school. Only Leslie got luckier than me. She's been married to her millionaire for 3 years now. But as for me, nothing has worked out in that department. At least there was Luke, and now even he's gone. Nicole continued. Did you ever think that maybe you should get married for love? Dina asked, anticipating the answer. For love? Are you kidding? Dina, you have to marry well-off men to live in comfort. Look, we're almost 30. Millionaires will start looking at young girls, and people like us will be left out for life. So, you have to hurry, Nicole said, lighting her second cigarette in a row. You wonder why I don't work? Because work takes away all your energy, beauty, and free time. People like you sit behind computers all day, writing reports, while I go to beauty salons. Nails, figure, hair, and complexion require a lot of attention and time. And without that, there's no way. Consider all this a kind of tax for your future life. Dina silently listened to her friend and thought about how different their perspectives on life could be. She felt a bit sorry for Nicole. And what happened in the end? Dina asked. I never thought about it. She admitted. You should have. Dina approached Nicole. Oh, I completely forgot about your order. Here, take it, Nicole said. She pulled out a large bag from the closet, neatly containing the ordered clothes. Thanks. I'll try them on at home, Dina said. However you like, Nicole shrugged. If everything fits, order more, I'll be glad. Besides, you know, I don't have any other source of income yet. After thanking her friend, Dina left her alone in the apartment. It was unpleasant for her to listen to Nicole. She decided that she would meet with her as rarely as possible. There was no talk of ever meeting Luke. Dina called a taxi and went home. Mrs. Dixon returned home after a challenging work day and found her son there. Oh, you came home earlier today. What happened? Did you have a fight with Nicole? She asked from the doorway. How did you guess? Luke wondered, not turning his head towards his mother. Luke, I know you too well. I know perfectly well that you now have a reason to drown your sorrows in alcohol. But until you find a company to drown your sorrows, you'll stay. She replied. You know how difficult my day was today. And all thanks to you. By the way, tell me, when will you get your act together and start helping me? I'm ashamed in front of my partners. A woman has a grown-up son, and she continues to work. Mom, let's not talk about it today. Luke interrupted his mother's speech. If you only knew what discovery I made about myself today. What discovery? Come on, tell me, Mrs. Dixon demanded. She approached her son and kissed him. You know I scold you, but then I regret it. You're my only son, and I won't let anyone harm you. I realized today how Nicole really feels about me. She didn't know that I overheard her phone conversation with her friend. Mom, she sees me as a mommy's boy, incapable of anything. Also, I'm not rich enough for her, Luke explained. Oh, Mrs. Dixon laughed. And is this a discovery for you? I've told you several times what I think of this girl. She's just a gold digger. She dated you only because she set her eyes on my money. Son, I've told you so many times that you need a different girl. Intelligent, serious, loyal, well-mannered. Not like your Nicole. Yes, Mom, you said so. You were right as always. But where do I find such a girl? Luke sincerely questioned. Where? Look around. You only notice those who wear short skirts, extend their eyelashes, and pump up their lips. Understand, you should pay attention to modest, simple girls. If you marry one, she'll take care of you all your life. The woman tried to reach her son. Maybe you're right. Luke agreed. But what about love, passion, love, passion? You can find that on the side. The main thing is to have comfort and tranquility at home. Trust me, son, I know what I'm talking about. Mrs. Dixon advised once again and went to the kitchen. Luke continued to lie on the couch, staring at the ceiling. He knew very well that demure girls were not his type. He was always drawn to bright, eccentric women like Nicole. They had been dating for 6 months, and during that time, he had fallen in love with her. How wrong he was about her. Resentment and anger wouldn't let the man breathe. The only thing he wanted now was to go to the club and drown his sorrows. "Dina, where did you get that? You look stunning," exclaimed Brooke upon seeing her sister. Dina stepped into the kitchen in new shoes and a dress that accentuated her figure. "I bought it. Ordered it from an online store." "Brooke, does it really look good on me?" Dina asked, blushing. "Don't doubt it for a moment, sis," Brooke convincingly replied. "Listen, did you only order this dress, or is there something else?" "Yes, also a suit, a skirt, a coat, and..." Dina began to list. Show me. Come on," interrupted the sister, dragging her into the room. "Something is happening with our Dina. Isn't it so, Bruce?" Miller quietly asked, serving soup onto plates. "It seems the time has come," agreed the man with his wife. "Well, thank goodness. Maybe our Dina will start arranging her personal life." "That's right," sighed the woman and smiled. While Brooke examined her sister's new additions, Dina stood silently, waiting for her evaluation. "Dina, this is just fantastic," Brooke said. "We need to go out in them urgently. Don't you think?" "Go out? How so?" Dina didn't immediately catch her sister's hint. "Come on, let's go somewhere," explained Brooke, looking hopefully at her older sister. "Where? It's already late." Dina continued to resist. "It's only 9 o'clock," Brooke insisted. "There's a cool nightclub not far from us. Let's have some fun at least until midnight." "Come on, Dina, agree." "I don't know." Dina continued to hesitate, but deep down, she was already agreeing to Brooke's proposal. "Since I've decided to change something in my life, I should do it," the girl persuaded herself. Brooke's persuasions were not in vain. Soon, the girls were on their way to the nightclub. Dina felt a bit uneasy. In her new form-fitting dress with her hair down, she felt even more constrained than usual. But there was no turning back. Brooke invited a couple more friends, so the evening promised to be lively and fun. Several people greeted Brooke at the club's entrance, confirming Dina's assumption that her sister was a regular here and knew many people. "Let's go to that table in the middle of the hall. It's the most convenient place close to the dance floor and the bar," Brooke suggested. "What will you be drinking?" "I don't know. Maybe tea," Dina timidly replied, glancing around. The loud music, flashing lights, and noise made it hard to concentrate. "Tea? Are you kidding?" Brooke was surprised. "Let me order you a light alcoholic cocktail. I'm sure you'll appreciate the taste. We could go for something stronger, but you have work tomorrow, and I have classes. Shall I order?" "Okay, order," Dina agreed. 2 more girls and 3 guys joined the sisters' table. They were all from the same university course and knew each other well. "Hi, I'm Maya, and this is Kara," one of the girls introduced herself. "And these are our friends Paul, Sam, and Kieran. You look fantastic." "Thank you. I'm Dina, and this is my sister Brooke," Dina introduced herself. "Finally, we meet. Brooke often tells us about you. Now we'll know who she's talking about," Kara said and winked at Dina. "And what does Brooke tell you about me?" Dina asked. "Various things. She only speaks highly of you. We know you're responsible, intelligent, and serious," Maya said with a smile. "Brooke often says she wishes she could be more like you, but it doesn't work out for her." "Really?" Dina was slightly surprised. "Honestly, I didn't expect that." Meanwhile, drinks appeared on the table. Brooke took her seat next to her sister. The group shared stories of university life, laughed, and had fun. Dina silently listened and smiled. She felt comfortable and enjoyed her time with her new friends. The girl realized that she had already started to forget what it was like to spend time with friends. The evening would have gone smoothly if it weren't for a new visitor to the club. Around 11 p.m., Dina noticed a familiar silhouette at the neighboring table. Upon closer inspection, she recognized Luke. The young man took a seat, placed an order, and looked around. After a couple of minutes, Dina and Luke's eyes met. Initially, Luke wanted to pretend he didn't recognize Dina, but his acting skills failed him. He weakly smiled and averted his gaze toward the bar. Dina didn't know where her sudden courage came from, but when her friends invited her to dance, she immediately agreed, positioning herself on the dance floor to keep an eye on Luke. In the meantime, Luke received his order. A friend joined him, and they began pouring the contents of the bottle into glasses together. After an hour, the men were already intoxicated. Luke's friend got dressed and left the club. Dina continued to watch Luke and decided to approach him. "Hello, Luke. I've been wondering if it was you for a while." Dina greeted the man, unsure of how to start the conversation. "Oh, it's you," Luke said, looking at the girl as if seeing her for the first time. "You see, my friend and I decided to loosen up a bit today. We have a reason." "I understand. I can guess why you decided to drink today," Dina said. "I visited Nicole today, and she told me everything. I can imagine what she could tell me." Luke smirked. "Have you known her for a long time? You two seem completely different. I don't understand how you could find common ground." "You're right. We are different," Dina replied. "We've known each other since our college years. After graduation, we didn't see each other, but we met by chance and started talking. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend having anything to do with that woman. Nothing good will come of it," Luke said. "She's a very dangerous and cunning person. Stay away from her." Seeing that Luke was quite intoxicated, Dina suggested taking a stroll. Surprisingly, he quickly agreed to the girl's proposal. Saying goodbye to their friends, Dina left the club with Luke, much to Brooke's surprise. Rain started falling outside. "You're quite charming." Luke unexpectedly shifted the conversation, catching Dina off guard. Dina thought he could only talk and think about Nicole tonight. "And you've got a great figure. Thank you for the compliment," Dina replied quietly, blushing, grateful that no one could see her at that moment. "Let's call a taxi," Luke suggested. "Where do you live? Is it far from here?" "No, just a few blocks away," Dina said. "Okay, here's the plan. We'll call a taxi now, drop you off first, and then me." Luke slid his words. "Thank you for spending the evening with me. You're a cool girl." Luke hailed a taxi, saying it would arrive in 5 minutes, and looked at Dina. For a while, he silently gazed at the girl. "You're beautiful, kind, and in general, the most wonderful," Luke unexpectedly said and kissed Dina on the lips. Dina did not expect such a turn of events, but did not resist. The young people separated only when the taxi driver signaled that he had arrived. "Dina, my number is 756-889-98. Did you remember? Call me tomorrow." "Definitely," Luke said and walked towards the taxi. "Remember, 756-889-98. Just make sure to call," he repeated after they settled in the back seat of the car. 756-889-98. Dina repeated until she reached home. The lights were still on. Aunt Miller was probably still awake, worried. And she was right. As soon as Dina entered, Brooke rushed towards her, followed by Miller. "Dina, it's already 1 in the morning. We agreed to party until midnight," Brooke chattered, hugging her sister. "Who did you leave the club with? Who's this guy?" "Don't worry, Brooke. I'm fine. Everything's okay." Dina smiled. 756-889-998. Dina repeated, noting the digits on a piece of paper. "All right. It's late. You'll tell us everything tomorrow if you want," Miller said. Good night, girls. Dina could see that curiosity was bubbling up in her sister, but she decided not to tell her anything for now. Brooke noticed the happiness radiating from her sister and opted to wait until the morning to have a conversation. However, they couldn't talk in the morning. Despite a sleepless night, Dina got up early and headed to work. She spent the whole day as if in a dream, and even her colleagues noticed the positive changes in Dina. Her eyes had never sparkled like this before, and her smiles were much rarer. Today, though, Dina was in a fantastic mood. By the end of the workday, Dina still couldn't bring herself to call Luke, even though she held the phone in her hands all day, attempting to dial his number. No, there's no need to call so quickly, Dina advised herself. What if Luke is waiting? I didn't give him my number anyway. But still, I shouldn't call during the day. I'll do it in the evening. Today, Dina made several mistakes in the documents. Luckily, she discovered them later herself. Realizing that she wasn't behaving quite adequately, Dina forced herself to pull together and eagerly awaited the end of the workday. For the first time in months, she left work on time at exactly 5 o'clock. She gathered her belongings, got dressed, and left the office. At home, Uncle Gary and Aunt Miller welcomed her. Miller worked shifts as a nurse in the hospital, and Bruce worked at the factory. Apparently, their shifts coincided today, and they returned home together. Dina, you're early today. You disappear at work. That's not good. You need to relax sometimes, Miller said, as usual. Yes, Aunt Miller. I can help you with dinner today. Tell me what to do. The girl turned to her aunt. While peeling potatoes and cutting meat, Dina observed Miller bustling around the stove. Come on, spill the beans. Who is he? Miller unexpectedly asked, not even turning to her niece. Who are you talking about? Dina asked, as if not suspecting what her aunt wanted to know. Who's the guy you left the club with yesterday? Brooke spilled everything right before you came back. So, who is this guy? Where were you with him for so long yesterday? Nothing terrible happened, Aunt. Dina tried to reassure her. Luke is my new acquaintance. We met at the club, got to know each other, and decided to take a walk. That's it. There's nothing more to say. But Brooke said he wasn't entirely sober. Miller said, yes, he had a little to drink, but he had a reason. Trust me, Aunt. Luke is a wonderful person, Dina said. Oh, honey, you should take a closer look at people. Spend more time with them before giving such assessments. Good, wonderful, Miller said, looking at Dina with concern. Make up your mind about what you want from me. I used to be too reserved, and you didn't like it. Finally, I meet a guy, and again, you're not happy. I'm not 15 anymore. I've been an adult for a long time and will decide for myself whom to date and whom not to, Dina said. The girl realized that she had been rude to her aunt. She felt ashamed of her behavior and immediately apologized to Miller. Of course, Miller wasn't offended. All right, I understand, Dina. The main thing is for you to be happy. Miller embraced Dina. To be happy, you need to be with a good and decent person. Remember that and never forget it. The women sat in the kitchen for a long time. By 7 o'clock, Brooke returned home. The family gathered for dinner, during which someone rang the doorbell. Bruce went to open it. In just a minute, he returned, not alone. Behind him, the women noticed a young man. Dina saw Luke and was momentarily speechless. Good evening. I apologize for coming unannounced. Dina didn't call me, and I don't have her number. Luke began to justify himself. In his hands, the young man held a bouquet of roses, which he promptly handed to Dina. Sorry, I didn't know how many women lived in the house, so I brought only one bouquet. He apologized again. No problem. We're not upset with Brooke, Miller replied, placing another plate on the table. Sit down. Have dinner with us. With pleasure, Luke replied. Oh yes, my name is Luke. Yes, Dina told us about you, Miller said, studying the guest with interest. The guy made an impression of an intelligent, smart, and well-mannered person, instantly winning over the women present. Brooke stared at him without taking her eyes off. Tell us about yourself. What do you do? Where do you work? Bruce inquired. I'm a lawyer by education, working in my construction company. Well, it's my mom's business, but I'm her right hand, Luke informed, further charming everyone at the table. I recently met your daughter, and I really hope we'll continue to communicate. By the way, I haven't had such delicious stew in a long time. Yes, it's our signature recipe. Miller rejoiced. But Dina is not our daughter. She's our niece. We've been raising Dina and Brooke as our daughters for many years. We lived together since the girls were left orphans. I'm sorry. I didn't know these details. The young man apologized. I thought you were Dina's parents, Dina concluded, and Dina and Luke left for the room. Brooke had been silent all this time, not knowing what to say. She helped her aunt with the dishes and cleaning up, only then retreating behind the door of her room. So, Miller, what do you think of Dina's guy? Bruce asked once they were alone in the kitchen. Oh, he's good. Exactly what our Dina needs, Miller replied. Who knows, maybe he's Dina's destiny. I have my doubts, the man whispered. He seems slippery, as if he's not telling something. Don't talk nonsense. They'll figure it out themselves. Miller approached her husband. He's a good boy, and you'll see, everything will work out for them. Dina and Luke sat in the room, looking at each other. How did you find me? I didn't expect to see you today, Dina asked, gazing into his eyes. Sorry, I was quite drunk yesterday, but I remembered your house. I waited for your call all day and couldn't resist coming to see you in the evening. Luke confessed. You don't mind me coming over, do you? No, of course not. The girl blushed. Come, I'll always be happy to see you. I realize that you're the girl I need, Luke said, taking her hand. Dina, let's date. I really like you. Finding someone like you is almost impossible. Someone like me? Dina asked again, blushing with embarrassment. Modest, hardworking, simple, and beautiful. Luke began to list. Oh, you're just a master at giving compliments. Dina smiled and looked away from the young man. I'm ready to give compliments to my beloved girl for the rest of my life. Luke continued. Dina, let's go for a walk. The girl agreed to the young man's proposal, and soon they were walking down the street together. Luke was telling Dina various stories, and she laughed, leaning against her beloved. It seemed to her that she had known him all her life and didn't want to be apart for a minute. Come on, who is she? Mrs. Dixon's voice made Luke turn away from the monitor and shift his attention to Mrs. Dixon. Mom, you can't hide anything from you, Luke replied, turning his back to his mother. Yeah, you're not good at it, son. Did you really think you could hide the changes in your life from me? You haven't been staying out late for 2 weeks, almost always come home sober, and started taking your work more seriously. Believe me, such positive changes in your behavior couldn't go unnoticed, Mrs. Dixon said. Well, okay, I give up. Luke sighed, turning back to his mother. Her name is Dina, 28 years old, college educated, works as an accountant at Drift Holdings. Anything else you are curious about? Luke asked impatiently, hinting that he found this conversation unpleasant. Why do you talk so coldly about all this? Mrs. Dixon asked. The way you just described the girl, she seems suitable for dating. At least she works, unlike your previous girlfriend, Nicole. Mom, Dina is completely different. Hardworking, serious, an honest girl. Luke said. Well, that's great. That's the kind of wife I dream for you. But you haven't said the main thing. What kind of family is she from? Mrs. Dixon asked. Oh, this might not please you, Mom, Luke warned the woman. She's from an ordinary family. Her parents died when she was still a teenager. Now she and her sister live with their aunt and uncle on the outskirts of the city. They live modestly but work hard. The aunt is a nurse at the clinic, and the uncle is a factory mechanic. Anything else you want to know? Well, that's not good. Can simple working folks raise such a good niece? It's hard to believe. Bring your chosen one to us. We'll get to know her. The woman suggested. Get to know her. That's unnecessary. I'm already starting to doubt if I need this relationship at all, Luke said, holding his head again. I told you I want to meet your Dina. Tomorrow is Saturday. Let's have dinner at a restaurant, Mrs. Dixon said. Dina didn't expect that Luke would invite her to dinner with his mother. She was nervous and couldn't calm down. Brooke saw that her sister was off since the morning, but didn't want to overwhelm her with questions. When Dina broke the second cup in the kitchen, Brooke couldn't hold back. Dina, what's wrong with you today? She asked, looking at her sister. Nothing. I'm just very nervous, you know, Dina said. Luke invited me to have dinner at a restaurant. At a restaurant. So what? What's the big deal? Don't worry so much about it. If I were in your place, I wouldn't be able to contain my happiness. But the thing is, we won't be having dinner alone, but with his mother, Dina said. With his mother? That's interesting. I didn't think things were so serious that he'd introduce you to his mom after just 2 weeks, Brooke said, pondering something. If Dina hadn't been so focused on herself, she would have immediately understood that something strange was happening with her sister too. But at the moment, she had no time for that. At 11, she had a hairdresser appointment, and then she wanted to stop by the store to buy new shoes. Realizing that she was already running late, Dina quickly got dressed and left her sister alone in the house. Meanwhile, Brooke sat at the kitchen table, deep in thought. Saturday passed unnoticed. Exactly at 7 p.m., Dina arrived at the restaurant, considered one of the most prestigious and expensive in the city. She had never been there before, but fortunately, Luke was there to greet her. He gallantly offered his hand and escorted her to the entrance. For the meeting with Luke's mother, Dina wore a new stylish dress and styled her hair. There was no trace of her previous long hair. She now had a bob that elegantly framed her face. Well, you look like a real city girl, Luke exclaimed, seeing Dina in her new look. You're changing right before my eyes, and all for the better. Dina thanked him for the compliment and followed him to the table where his mother was already waiting. Mrs. Dixon, upon seeing Dina, stood up and smiled. So, this is the girl my son is dating. I must say, Dina, my first impression of you is simply overwhelming. I would have noticed you too if I were in his place. Kamala Dixon, Luke's mom. The woman introduced herself, gesturing for them to sit. Nice to meet you, Dina modestly replied, lowering her eyes with shyness. They took their prepared seats and began examining the menu. What cuisine do you prefer, Dina? Mrs. Dixon asked. I frequent this restaurant often and can recommend a couple of wonderful dishes. The cuisine here is magnificent. Thank you. I'd be glad if you help me, Dina agreed. Dina sat at the table, trying not to reveal her nervousness. Dina, I'll tell you straight. My son became a completely different person after meeting you. How should I put it? More serious, perhaps. Grown up, Mrs. Dixon said. Just for that reason alone, I understood that Luke found himself a wonderful girl. Thank you, Mrs. Dixon. But I think it's not only my merit but yours as well. Your son is wonderful on his own. I consider myself very lucky with him, Dina replied, looking at her beloved with love. Let's hope that your meetings will turn into something more, Mrs. Dixon said, raising her glass. Let's drink to you, my dears, to your happiness and love. Everything seemed like a magical dream to Dina. Just a month ago, she couldn't even imagine that she would meet her beloved person and would be toasting to love and happiness in the company of his mother. The dinner was simply splendid. Dina gradually got used to Luke's mother and it became easier for her to communicate with her. But the evening was spoiled by unexpected guests at the restaurant. Suddenly, an elegantly dressed man entered the hall with his young companion, whom Luke, Dina, and Mrs. Dixon recognized as Nicole Bryce. Apparently, the girl didn't suffer for long after the breakup with her ex-fiancé and had already found someone new. Judging by the way her new companion was dressed, he was not a poor man and could afford to spend money. Nicole also noticed her old acquaintances. This encounter was unexpected for her as well, evident from her expression. However, she quickly adapted to the situation and began behaving naturally and effortlessly, displaying superiority over her ex-boyfriend and former classmate. Dina, where did she come from? And with whom? Mrs. Dixon said angrily. Mom, don't pay attention to them. Luke tried to reassure his mother. So what if they showed up here? Nicole just found another money bag and is having fun with him. By the way, I know who he is. Money bag, you say? Mrs. Dixon remained unsettled. Are you sure you know this person? It's Nicholas Rogers, my business partner. We recently signed a significant contract with him. I'm afraid that if Nicole finds out about this, she'll seek revenge, and I'll lose a huge sum of money. Mrs. Dixon was visibly distressed. She quickly gathered herself and left the restaurant. Dina also felt uncomfortable sitting across from Nicole and her ex-boyfriend. Just a few weeks ago, Luke was Nicole's boyfriend, and now it seemed like he left her and went to her friend. Luke, I think it's time for us to leave too. It's not very pleasant to be in the same company as Nicole. You understand? Dina asked. I understand. Let's go for a walk and look for my mom. Although I'm sure she left a long time ago. Luke squeezed out a smile. But we'll call a taxi and try to forget about this incident. Only when they left the restaurant, Dina started to feel better. The sparkle of moving car lights helped her snap out of unpleasant thoughts. She wanted to work hand in hand with Luke until the early morning. To her surprise, Luke invited her to continue the evening at his apartment. Of course, she didn't immediately agree to his proposal, but Luke was so insistent that she gave in. Luke's two-room apartment turned out to be small but very cozy. After a cup of coffee, the young people moved to the bedroom. That night, Dina spent it away from home for the first time. To reassure her family, she sent them a text message and tried to forget everything in the company of her beloved. That escalated quickly. Bruce muttered discontentedly when he didn't find Dina at breakfast. Staying overnight at Luke's already. Isn't it too early? I completely agree with you, Bruce. But what can we do? Dina is already a grown-up girl. She knows what she's doing. It's time, didn't you say so yourself? Miller reminded her husband. And you, don't even think about suitors. She's still young. First, get an education and start working. Bruce warned Brooke and left the table without thanking his wife for breakfast. I am already grown up and make my own decisions, Brooke replied. Am I not right? Aunt, right. Dear, of course, you're right. Just understand, Bruce and I worry about you. Miller sighed. Brooke spent a few more minutes contemplating something and then retreated to her room. It was April, and the weather had warmed up, making it tempting to go outside. However, Brooke spent the entire Sunday at home, not even stepping onto the porch. Bruce and Miller understood that something was going on with the girl, but they didn't know exactly what. Dina returned from Luke's only in the evening. Her radiant appearance made it clear that she was happy, so questioning her about anything else seemed unnecessary. Dina wanted to share everything with her younger sister, but Brooke didn't open the door for her. She mentioned being tired and having a headache. The evening took an unexpected turn with a sudden phone call. Well, you cunning little thing. You didn't pretend with your friend for long. Quickly snatched my Luke. A female voice said over the phone. Dina realized she was talking to Nicole. Nicole, but you broke up, didn't you? Dina tried to justify herself. If not for your quarrel and Luke's own unwillingness, I would never have intervened in your relationship. And how did he fall for someone like you? An ugly duckling. Believe me, Luke won't stick with you for long. He's not the kind of man ready to spend his life with just one woman, Nicole said. The girl was clearly furious. Apparently, seeing Dina next to her ex-fiancé was the last thing Nicole expected. After this phone conversation, Dina had a hard time recovering and managed to fall asleep only deep into the night. Days passed quickly. May arrived, followed by June. Luke and Dina continued their relationship. Of course, the girl wasn't always pleased with the young man's behavior. Ignoring his flaws, Luke was too demanding of Dina, often criticizing her over trivial matters. But Dina closed her eyes to everything because she unconditionally loved Luke and didn't want to lose him. In July, Dina had vacation, and in early June, Luke proposed to her. The young couple decided to have their wedding in midsummer at a luxurious restaurant. A gift from Mrs. Dixon. Time flew swiftly. Both families were immersed in wedding preparations. Dina and Miller visited bridal salons, bought a dress, shoes, and a veil. Mrs. Dixon arranged everything with the restaurant, choosing the one where she first met her future daughter-in-law. The establishment's owner was a good friend of the Dixon family. Luke and Dina initially didn't want to invite many guests to the wedding, preferring to celebrate in a small circle. However, Mrs. Dixon insisted that all her business partners should attend her son's wedding. Otherwise, it's impossible, she stubbornly asserted. What will people think? That I'm so poor I can't organize a grand wedding for my son? Unable to convince his mother otherwise, Luke gave in to her. Dina had long noticed that her future husband disliked arguing with his mother, even when their views differed significantly. The only thing that troubled her was whether Nicholas Rogers would come to the wedding. As far as she knew, Nicole was still with him, and the couple also planned to get married soon. The wedding took place on the appointed day. After the grand ceremony, all the guests headed to the restaurant. Rogers was absent, and Dina hoped he wouldn't show up. However, she was mistaken. He appeared accompanied by his girlfriend. Nicole looked absolutely stunning. Her gorgeous dress accentuated her figure, and her hair was beautifully styled, with a constant smile on her face. Many admired her and were curious about the identity of the famous businessman Rogers' companion. For a moment, it seemed to Dina that the guests had forgotten the purpose of being at the restaurant, shifting all their attention from the bride and groom to Nicholas Rogers and his girlfriend. The wedding lasted almost until morning, leaving Dina exhausted, barely able to stand on her feet. Despite her fatigue, she was immensely happy. "Brooke, you look really unwell," Miller said, once again visiting her younger niece in the hospital. "Calm down, Aunt. I'm already getting better." Brooke tried to reassure her aunt. Brooke couldn't attend her sister's wedding due to poor health. She had been in the hospital for 3 days and couldn't leave her room for long. "It's a pity you weren't at the wedding." Dina was upset when she learned about your condition, the woman said, pulling out fruits from a bag. "Eat these vitamins and recover quickly. The doctor said you need them right now." "Thank you, Aunt." Brooke thanked the woman, holding back tears. "I'm disappointed that I ended up in the hospital on such an important day for my sister." "And what did the doctor say?" Miller asked, stroking her niece's head. "They say nothing. It's just regular fatigue. That's all. Trifles. It will pass soon," Brooke explained. "Oh, I forgot to mention. Dina wanted to visit you today. She'll come after lunch. She got tired at the wedding." The crowd didn't disperse until morning. So many gifts were given. "Our girl is lucky. You'll be lucky too." The woman continued to share news. "Don't bother. She shouldn't pay attention to my problems. Tell her, Aunt, not to come. I don't want to see anyone," Brooke said. "Why are you talking like that? Dina cares about you and is worried. She can't find peace, and you're saying no." Miller insisted. "I said no, that means no. Brooke replied sharply and burst into tears, burying her face in the pillow. Miller completely didn't understand what was happening and chose not to argue with her niece. She had long noticed that Brooke was behaving differently than before. The cheerful and carefree girl was nowhere to be found. The reason for these changes was unknown, even to Brooke's close friends. 5 days later, Brooke was discharged from the hospital. She was still pale and struggled to stay on her feet, but at least she had stopped fainting and refusing to eat. In late July, Brooke announced that she wanted to leave the city. She didn't specify where. Bruce and Miller thought she was joking. However, when she began packing her bags, they realized that Brooke was serious and couldn't be stopped. The next morning, without saying goodbye to her sister, Brooke left. She promised to call when she settled down, but she didn't reveal her destination. About a week later, she finally called. During this time, Bruce and Miller, her aunt and uncle, were almost driven insane with worry. Brooke informed them that she had moved to the capital, found a job, and rented an apartment. She planned to continue her education. Thanking her aunt and uncle for everything, she turned off her phone, promising not to forget them and to visit. "Can someone explain to me what's happening in this house?" Bruce shouted loudly when the connection with Brooke was cut off. "What does Brooke think she's doing? What's going on with her? Look at Dina. She got married, visits us, and Brooke disappeared. Who knows where? Maybe she found a fiancé." "Calm down, Bruce. The girl has grown up and decides for herself how to live." Miller tried to reassure her husband. "Let her try living independently. We all have to start sometime. If something goes wrong, she'll come back home. Just let everything work out for her the way she wants. Let our girl be well." "Why are you talking about Brooke again?" Dina's voice made Bruce and Miller turn their attention away. The elder niece did not forget her aunt and uncle, visiting them several times a week. After Luke and Dina's wedding, Luke forbade Dina from going to work, and she had to resign. Dina struggled to adapt to her new lifestyle, not knowing what to do with herself. "You should have a child, Dina," Miller advised her niece. "Yes, Aunt, I want that too, but it hasn't happened yet. But I think everything will be fine. Luke and I have been living together for a short time. We'll have a child, maybe more," Dina replied. From Dina's expression, Miller understood that something was bothering her, but she was trying to hide the reason. "Dina, what happened? Did you have a fight with Luke?" Miller asked anxiously. "No. Where did you get that? I'm just a bit sad. And I'm worried about Brooke too." Dina tried to change the subject. She noticed that Luke had changed significantly right after the wedding. His behavior was different. He allowed himself to be rude to his wife. He didn't consider his wife's feelings and desires. Even Dina's resignation from work was solely his decision. Dina didn't know what to do about it or how to react. Still, she didn't want to talk about it to anyone, hoping that everything would settle down soon. After discussing a few more matters, Dina hurried home. She knew her husband would be angry if he found out she hadn't managed to prepare dinner. Sometimes she felt like he married her just so she could cook, clean, and do household chores. Luke had high expectations for his wife. The food on the table had to be delicious, the house meticulously cleaned, and shirts neatly ironed. Despite this, Luke himself was not particularly neat. He easily scattered socks around and never cleaned up after himself. In short, lived the way he wanted. Only a few days had passed since the wedding, and he had already come home drunk several times well past midnight. Without deigning to explain anything to his wife, Dina endured all his antics, thinking it was a temporary phase, and that everything would surely work out soon. She had read in a book that such things happen with men, that after marriage, they start to realize they've lost their freedom and express their protest this way. Naive Dina still didn't know what trials awaited her head and what kind of monster she had married. This year, winter arrived early. The first snowfall came at the end of October. Dina strolled in the park, observing children joyfully playing, tossing the freshly fallen snow at each other. Once upon a time, she and her sister played like that too. Brooke hadn't seen Dina since summer. Her younger sister didn't call, and she remained unresponsive. Dina learned about her from her aunt and uncle. Dina still hadn't found a job. Luke insisted that his wife should stay at home, taking care of him and their future children. However, children were not in the plans for the young couple. Dina visited several doctors, all of whom assured her that everything was fine, and she could easily conceive if she wished. However, pregnancy didn't happen. Doctors suspected that Luke might be the cause of their infertility. But when Dina mentioned this to her husband for the first time, he got angry, claiming he was perfectly healthy and had no intention of going to hospitals. Dina didn't argue with her husband. She just waited. Having spent the whole day idle, she waited for her husband to come home for dinner. It was already 9 o'clock on the clock, and Luke still wasn't home. Unnoticed, the clock's hands crept to 10, then 11 at night, and Dina was still sitting alone at home. The husband appeared only at 7 in the morning when Dina, tired from a sleepless night, struggled to get up from the couch to open the door. Luke reeked of alcohol and women's perfume. Seeing traces of lipstick on her husband's shirt, Dina realized that Luke was cheating on her. "I would understand if we had lived together for a few years," Dina mused, looking at her sleeping husband. "But we've been married for almost nothing, and he's already looking for other women." Dina remembered Nicole's words when her friend described Luke as an unfaithful and fickle man. How unfortunate that she didn't listen to her then. Why did he even marry us? The girl wondered. If he doesn't love me, why go through all this trouble? Today I'll go to Mrs. Dixon and ask her what to do next. In any case, something needs to change. Without waiting for the moment when Luke would wake up, Dina went to Mrs. Dixon's office in the morning. She didn't expect to see her future mother-in-law in her office. "Dina, what are you doing here? Is Luke with you? We have an important meeting in half an hour." She rambled on, simultaneously studying something on paper. "Mrs. Dixon, I need to talk to you," Dina began. "Can't this wait until the evening? And by the way, where's Luke? Didn't you come together?" The woman asked. "That's precisely what I wanted to talk to you about, Mrs. Dixon," Dina finally decided. "The thing is, right after the wedding, he became just unbearable. Almost every day, he comes home drunk, several times returning only at dawn. And yes, today he's unlikely to show up at work. It seems he has a lover, Mrs. Dixon." Mrs. Dixon, hearing the nervous speech of her daughter-in-law, raised her head and attentively listened. The woman clearly did not expect such a start to her workday. "Listen, dear, don't you think you and my son have lived too little together for him to start cheating on you?" Mrs. Dixon asked, glancing at the door. "Let's discuss all these issues in the evening. I don't have time for these conversations right now. And meanwhile, think if there's any fault of yours in the way my son started treating you differently than before the wedding. I'll drop by around 8 o'clock. And now, excuse me, I have things to attend to." Dina looked at her mother-in-law and, for the first time, clearly understood why she was called the Iron Lady. Mrs. Dixon had just heard that her son's married life was falling apart, and she calmly continued her phone conversation. Dina left the company building and walked away. A snowfall began. The sharp wind blew against her face, but Dina didn't notice anything around her. She walked quietly towards the city promenade. Lost in thought, she pondered how strangely life had been unfolding lately. After meeting Luke, she thought she had never truly lived before, and now it seemed the opposite. She nostalgically recalled the peaceful days at her aunt and uncle's house with her sister, when days were filled with meetings with colleagues, endless work, reports, and plans. Now, more than ever, Dina began to realize that she missed all of that. What should I do? How to live on? I can't bear such treatment anymore, she repeated to herself. Dina returned home only around 3 in the afternoon. To her surprise, Luke was not in the apartment. She was even glad that her husband was not at home. She didn't want to get into another argument. Assuming that Luke had woken up and gone to work, Dina lay down on the bed and slept until 7 in the evening. God, Luke will be back soon. And I haven't prepared dinner, Dina exclaimed and rushed to the kitchen. Mrs. Dixon had promised to come around 8. Having prepared dinner, Dina brewed tea and waited for her husband and mother-in-law. The clock showed 8:30, but neither of them showed up. Son, tell me, what's happening between you and Dina? Mrs. Dixon asked, embracing her son by the shoulders. Despite the late hour, Luke lingered in his mother's apartment, showing no hurry to go home. Nothing special. Luke tried to evade the question. I wish it were so, but unfortunately, I've learned something. Now I want to hear your version of what's going on. You're not rushing home today. Has your young wife already bored you? Mrs. Dixon asked. Oh, I see you're well informed, the young man exclaimed. Well, I guess I have to tell you everything. You know, it seems I got married without love. I don't know what it was. Probably hypnosis. And you, Mummy, hypnotized me. Didn't you drill into me what my wife should be like? Simple, smart, hardworking. What else? Remind me, please. Only don't blame me for all your troubles. Mrs. Dixon began to resist. You got married of your own free will. I didn't force you into it, but you reminded me almost every day. You know, I think I'm just not capable of being a good husband. I don't love Dina, and I want to divorce her. Luke confessed. Well, that's fine. I've long been thinking about finding you a more advantageous match, Mrs. Dixon mysteriously said. Your Dina is a nice girl, but we made a completely wrong choice with you. You need a different wife. As a daughter-in-law, Dina doesn't suit me anymore. Imagine, me neither, Luke said. Mom, please promise me that I can get out of this mess. Don't worry about anything, my son. Mrs. Dixon reassured him and whispered something in his ear. Mom, I'm a grown-up boy now, and I'll do as you told me. Luke calmed his mother, said goodbye, and left the apartment. He didn't go straight home. In the cafe, a slim brunette with long, beautiful hair had been waiting for him for an hour. Not having waited for her husband and mother-in-law, Dina cleared the table and went to bed. Luke returned around midnight. Without explaining anything to his wife, he fell asleep right away. In the morning, Luke woke up as if nothing had happened, had breakfast, and went to work, promising his wife that he would try to come back on time. Once again, Dina had to spend the whole day at home, missing her husband. She could not even guess what trials awaited her ahead. Around 2 in the afternoon, an unknown call flashed on Dina's phone screen. Good day, Dina. This is the HR department of a certain company. My name is Dolores. A lively female voice reminded the girl of the days when she went to work every day. Hello. Dina greeted the girl. How can I help you? The thing is, we found out that you resigned some time ago. We also know that you are an excellent accountant, and our firm is currently in need of professionals in your field. If you are interested in our offer, we are ready to invite you for an interview, the girl informed her. Dina found the offer tempting, but she understood that her husband would not approve of her initiative. A decision had to be made now, so she agreed to cooperate. Great. Then write down the address. When can you come by? It would be convenient for us to meet you in the evening around 7. Does that suit you? Dolores inquired. Dina found it strange that the interview was scheduled for such a late hour. Still, she had already decided to attend the interview and gave an affirmative answer. Excellent. The girl exclaimed and dictated the address where Dina should appear for the meeting. Having chosen the right outfit, Dina left her apartment early to avoid being late. Exactly at 7 o'clock, she arrived at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. In the semi-empty hall, Dina noticed a bright blonde who impatiently glanced at her watch and looked out the window. Thinking that this was the girl who invited her for the interview, Dina approached the table. "Hello, I'm Dina. Are you the one who called me today about the job?" She addressed the girl. "Yes, that's me. Very pleased to see you, Dina. Please, have a seat," the girl replied. The girl was clearly delighted with Dina's arrival and tried to do everything to befriend her. "So, how can I help? What position are you considering for me?" Dina asked. "I know one of your former colleagues who described you as the best accountant in the organization." Dolores began to explain. "Our company opened recently, so we need highly qualified professionals to get on our feet." "Excuse me, but who exactly among my colleagues recommended me?" Dina asked, feeling more and more intrigued by the new offer. She didn't want to think about how her husband would react to her new position. "Hey, it's not that important," Dolores replied. "The main thing is that you were described so well that we immediately decided you were the right person we needed." "Well, okay. If you don't want to say, don't say," Dina agreed. "So, what kind of organization do you have? And what would I be doing if I agree?" "I already like this answer. So, listen. Our company is only 6 months old. We specialize in selling computers, phones, and other tech gadgets. We want to appoint you as the chief accountant. That's all you need to know for now. If you agree, I invite you to come to the new workplace tomorrow and learn more about everything." "And where exactly should I go?" Dina asked. "Does that mean you agree?" Dolores asked in return. "Yes, I agree. I would definitely like to see your office," Dina said. "Great. I think that after visiting your future workplace, all your doubts will be dispelled. Write down the address. Just don't be surprised. We are located on the outskirts of the city not far from this place. Can you come tomorrow around 5 in the evening? I'll meet you," Dolores said. After noting the address, Dina finished her tea and headed home, where her husband was already waiting. To her surprise, he didn't bother her with questions. He was in a cheerful mood and even tried to set the table himself. The evening passed calmly. Dina decided not to tell Luke anything yet. She would inform him only when she signed all the employment papers. The entire following day, Dina spent in nervous excitement. Various thoughts crossed her mind. On the one hand, she was happy about the prospect of starting a new job soon. On the other hand, the fear of her husband was significant. Over the months spent with Luke, Dina had managed to study him quite well and was well aware that he wouldn't be thrilled about this news. After preparing a delicious dinner, she got ready to go to the specified address. Again, it seemed strange to her that the interview was scheduled so late, but she tried to push away negative thoughts and focus on the positive. Just as she was about to leave, her mobile phone rang. It was her aunt. "Probably, as always, she senses that something is happening to me." Dina thought and pressed the green button. "Hello, Aunt Miller. I'm listening." "Dina, dear, is everything okay with you?" Miller asked. "I had a bad dream today. I've been thinking all day whether to tell you about it or not. So, I decided." "Aunt Miller, you know I don't believe in such nonsense." Dina interrupted her. "I'm fine, and it's going to get even better soon. So, please don't worry." "Oh, well, okay. Maybe you could come to us. Come on, get ready. We'll sit, chat. I miss you and Brooke so much," the woman requested. "I'd love to, but right now I can't. But tomorrow, I promise to drop by and tell you everything." "I think I'll have good news for you," Dina said. "All right, Dina," Miller sighed. "Just please take care of yourself." "And where are you going now?" "I'm running late, Aunt. I'll call you back." "Okay," the girl replied, said goodbye, and turned off the phone. Calling a taxi and giving the address, Dina sat in the back seat of the car, watching the road. In October, it got dark early, so the city streets were already lit up with lanterns. Soon, the road was almost deserted. Trees began to appear on both sides of the road. It's strange that the office of a computer sales company is so far beyond the city limits, Dina thought. only now realizing that she might be getting into an unpleasant situation. Fortunately, at that moment, she felt the taxi driver slowing down, turning off the main road to the left, and stopping near a small two-story building. Getting out of the car, the girl realized that the house looked more like a villa. Ringing the doorbell, Dina eagerly awaited her encounter with her future bosses. After a few seconds, the door opened. Dolores greeted Dina, just as promised, wearing an unusual outfit for work, a long black tight-fitting dress that accentuated her figure. Dolores smiled at her guest and invited her inside. "So, our office is currently located in this house," she said, ascending the stairs in high heels. "We hope to open a proper office building in the city center soon. Of course, we can do that with your help, among other things. Dina, are you ready for the interview?" "Probably," Dina whispered quietly. "Don't worry, everything will be fine." Dolores reassured her and opened the door to a room that looked more like a small home library than an office, filled with shelves. Dolores led Dina into the room, gesturing her to wait. Whom she was waiting for, Dina didn't know yet, but she strongly disliked everything that was happening. The house was furnished with beautiful, expensive furniture, but its atmosphere was strange, perhaps even eerie. Dina noticed that most of the books behind the glass shelves were in different languages. On the writing desk next to the laptop stood an antique inkwell with a quill, creating a contrast of modernity and antiquity in the room. "Dina, are you not bored here?" Dolores entered the room. "The owner is running a bit late. He just called and said he'd be here within half an hour. How about a cup of coffee? What do you think?" "Sure," Dina replied. "Great. I'll bring it right away. What do you prefer?" Dolores asked. "Black, not too strong. And please add 2 spoons of sugar," unsuspecting Dina requested. Dolores disappeared behind the door, and Dina continued to explore the room. Gradually, she began to understand why she felt somewhat uncomfortable in this office. The entire house was furnished and decorated in an 18th century style. Curtains, drapes, furniture, lighting, everything was custom-made to resemble that era. Apparently, the owner had a deep appreciation for the 18th century. Dina had only seen such a design in movies, making her feel as though she had stepped into the past, unsettling her soul. Meanwhile, Dolores returned with a tray of coffee. Dina's favorite oatmeal cookies accompanied the coffee. "How did you know this is my favorite?" Dina wondered. "I've loved it since childhood." "I just guessed. We often serve it here," Dolores replied, pouring the fragrant drink into the cups. Dina recalled she hadn't eaten anything since the morning and eagerly awaited Dolores to hand her a cup. "Here you go," Dolores said, offering Dina the aromatic beverage. "Thank you." Dina expressed her gratitude. She took the first sip of coffee and sensed that it wasn't quite the taste she expected. Deciding that Dolores simply didn't know how to brew coffee, she chose not to disappoint her and continued drinking. "Dolores, I've noticed that the atmosphere in this house is not quite ordinary. Can you tell me who the designer is?" Dina asked and felt her head spinning. Her tongue wasn't obeying her. She looked at Dolores, who seemed to be laughing and crying alternately. In any case, Dina felt that her new acquaintance had inexplicably changed. She wanted to say something but could only mumble a few incomprehensible sounds before losing consciousness. Ceiling. A white ceiling and light from the window, along with a ringing in the ears and excruciating pain in the head and throughout the body. Who am I? Where am I? What's happening to me? Thoughts slowly emerged one after another. In the spacious room, there was only one bed, on which lay a girl. Who is this girl? Where is she from? And how did she end up here? Only a few people knew, those who had been coming to the country house for the past 2 days. Kelly, wait, I'll soon settle all my affairs and come to you. Don't worry, my love, we'll get married soon and be happy. Of course, I promise you. At most, within a month, we'll be married, he assured her. The familiar male voice made the girl startle, and she closed her eyes. Suddenly, She began to recall who she was, who the person in the room was, and how she ended up here. The only unclear thing was what had happened to her and why she felt so unwell. Luke. Who is he talking to? He's going to get married, but I'm his wife. What wedding is he talking about? Thoughts in Dina's head became clearer. She vividly realized that revealing she had regained consciousness early, or maybe even dangerously, could pose a threat to her life. Kelly. My beloved. Luke continued talking on the phone. You understand. I need to sort out a couple of things, and I'll come to you right away. Hold on, my love, my beloved. Who are you talking so kindly to? You've never called me that. Dina fought, lying on the bed and trying not to give herself away. Meanwhile, Luke hung up the phone, approached the bed so closely that Dina could hear his breath distinctly. If she had opened her eyes at that moment, she would have met the gaze of a completely unfamiliar person. Of course, her husband stood beside her, but at that moment, his gaze was filled with such hatred and malice that Dina had never seen before. After standing next to his wife for a few minutes, Luke dialed someone else's number again. Listen, Tom. We urgently need to do something about Dina. This fool, Katie, couldn't do anything right. She definitely added the wrong dose of poison, although she swears she followed the instructions. He nervously spoke into the phone. I don't need extra problems. Kelly is not the kind of girl who will wait, and I'm not going to give her up. Dina didn't know how to react to what she heard. Gradually, she began to understand that her beloved husband was to blame for everything that had happened. She loved Luke so much. She was willing to sacrifice anything for him, and now he had decided to cold-bloodedly get rid of her. The girl lay there, struggling to hold back tears. Moreover, Dina felt that her body wasn't responding. When Luke finally left the room, she could take a deep breath and relax a little. Knowing that her husband could return at any moment, Dina ordered herself not to panic and not to cry. I married the most unworthy person imaginable. We've lived together so little, and he decided to kill me to marry someone else. Why? Why is he treating me like this? He could have just asked for a divorce, admitted he didn't love me. Why did he play such a game with me? Dina pondered, one question after another. Despite her utmost desire, she couldn't get out of bed. The girl realized that she had been injected with some substance intended to kill her, but miraculously, she remained alive. However, her time was limited. As Luke mentioned over the phone, he was searching for a way to finally get rid of his wife and be free from her. Dina didn't know how much time had passed, but judging by the still sufficient daylight outside, she understood that there was enough time until evening. She hoped that by evening, she would be able to move and attempt to escape from this dreadful house. Where am I? Still in the same house I came to for a job interview, or somewhere else? Dina pondered. Hearing approaching footsteps, the girl closed her eyes again and froze. Someone entered the room, approached the bed for a few seconds, and began to open some bags. Dina briefly opened her eyes and saw an unfamiliar man in the room. He stood with his back to her, so she couldn't see his face. The stranger opened a large leather bag and searched for something in it. Without saying a word, he approached Dina again, applied a tourniquet to her arm, and began to inject a substance into her vein. Fearing for her life, Dina automatically opened her eyes and looked at the man who clearly didn't expect her to wake up. You've awakened. Well, thank God, he said, continuing to administer the unknown liquid into the vein. Don't be afraid. I won't harm you. I'll leave you with supporting vitamins only. You need to endure a little longer. But please, I beg you, don't let anyone in the house see that you've regained consciousness. It's very dangerous. If you understand, nod your head. Dina nodded her head with difficulty, wincing in pain. That's it. I see you have a headache. That's normal. You were injected with such a dose of a narcotic that you almost fell into a deep coma. I performed all the necessary procedures in time. Perhaps, only thanks to them, you're still alive. But I repeat, your life is in danger. Now I'll give you a sedative, and you'll sleep until 7 in the evening. I'll return around that time, and we'll figure out what to do next." Dina felt her eyelids getting heavy, her thoughts becoming sluggish, and she fell asleep. Waking up in the dark room, Dina was initially scared, but then she remembered everything that had happened to her. "I wonder how much time has passed. The stranger promised to return closer to 7, but he's not here yet. So, it's probably around 6 in the evening," Dina thought, feeling that she could now move her legs freely. Quietly rising from the bed, she staggered towards the window and saw that she was on the ground floor of a house surrounded by a forest. Her body started to move, but the girl was so weak that after just a few steps, she grew tired. With difficulty, she made it back to the bed and lay down again. She did this just in time. Footsteps approached the door, and someone entered the room. By Dina's voice, Dolores, her new acquaintance, was immediately recognized. The girl approached the bed and stood silently for a few minutes. "How did this happen? Why didn't you die right away? And that idiot is taking his time. A coward, not a man," she said upon hearing a phone call. Dolores immediately took the phone out of her purse. "Hello. Yes, everything's fine." Dolores whispered into the receiver. "Maybe it's enough waiting. How do we get out of this situation now?" "Yes, I know everything. I'll help however I can. Just don't forget about my fee." Dolores sat by the bed for another 15 minutes and left the room. Dina understood that there was no time to waste. She needed to save herself, but she didn't know how. "Maybe I'm still in the same country house. The room is just on the opposite side of the house." Dina concocted an escape plan. "I just need to wait for that man." From Dolores' words, Dina gathered that she and Luke failed to kill her the first time. Dolores was probably just assisting her husband for a fee. Where did Kelly come from? The woman her husband was rushing to. Time passed, and Dina never saw her savior. She lay on the bed, not knowing the day of the week, the time, or her location. She hesitated to get out of bed, knowing it could jeopardize her life. After lying like this for a few more hours, she couldn't take it anymore, got up, and noticed a bag under the bed containing her outerwear. "So, this person really wants to help me. But where is he? What if he doesn't come back at all? If Luke is ready to get rid of me so easily, eliminating another person won't be difficult for him. I need to run. I need to do something urgently." Dina convinced herself. Hurriedly dressing, it took a few more minutes to open the window. Luckily, the room was on the ground floor. After a few attempts to climb onto the windowsill, Dina managed to open the window and jump outside. Crossing a small wooden fence was effortless. The small house was situated next to the forest, and Dina didn't know who it belonged to. At that moment, only one thought was spinning in her head: to escape as far away from this dreadful place as possible, and only then figure out what to do next. The girl overestimated her strength. After covering about 300 meters, her legs began to wobble, and her heart pounded as if she had run 3 kilometers. Coming to a stop to catch her breath and look around, Dina realized she was in the woods. It was quiet all around. Dina felt scared to be alone in the middle of the forest. But the house was even scarier. She tried to overcome her fear, and as soon as she took the first step, she heard the crackling of branches and someone's footsteps. "Oh God, someone is chasing me. I've been tracked," Dina thought in horror, bolting towards dense thickets. The girl was not mistaken. She was not alone in the forest. Someone was running right behind her, but getting through the thorny bushes was more challenging for him than for Dina. After about 5 minutes, she heard moans and shouts. Thinking that something happened to the pursuer, she continued to run away and soon realized that she had managed to escape from him. However, Dina didn't feel joy. Now she clearly understood that another enemy was in front of her: the cold, hunger, and the impossibility of getting out of the forest. The girl realized she was lost and had no idea what to do next. In any case, I have to keep going, not stand still. Although my strength is running out, I'll manage. This forest must end somewhere, Dina thought. If I stop, I'll freeze for sure. October in that year turned out to be unusually cold. The thin autumn coat didn't protect her from the frost. Dina felt that she would freeze completely soon. Gradually, it became brighter in the forest. Dina didn't know how much time she spent in the woods, probably about 3 hours. If that was the case, she had escaped from the house around 4 in the morning. The stranger had promised to visit her at 7 in the evening, but never showed up. Dina thought about the man and felt sorry for him. He was the only person in the whole world willing to help her. However, she knew nothing about his fate, and she feared that something bad might have happened to him. Dina didn't notice how the forest began to thin out, and she emerged into a clearing. Looking around, she saw only tall trees. After standing in place for a few minutes, Dina felt a strong dizziness. She lost consciousness again and fell onto the cold ground. Well, finally, you've come to. The unfamiliar voice of an old woman made Dina recall everything that had happened to her. Am I still alive? Dina thought, and began to cough. It seemed like the cough would tear the girl's lungs apart. Her head was splitting. Her whole body ached, and nausea crept up to her throat. Here, dear, drink some milk with honey, said the elderly woman, offering Dina a small mug. It's the first remedy for a cough. Be careful not to burn yourself. Following the old woman's advice, Dina started drinking the milk. The hot, sweet liquid indeed eased her cough and reduced the pain in her chest. After finishing the milk, Dina immediately fell asleep. She slept for a long time. When she woke up, it was already dark outside. The dim light of the lamp illuminated the small room where the girl lay. The kind old woman was sitting in a chair, knitting something. A large fluffy gray cat was on her lap, purring loudly. All right, Manny, I've added some logs to the fireplace. Now we'll have warmth for the whole night, the old man said. But what about our girl? Still not awake. The old man approached the bed, saw that Dina had stirred, and called his wife. You should give her some chicken broth, Manny. Our guest is completely weakened. He whispered and gently stroked the girl's hair. Of course, I will, if she doesn't mind. Her temperature won't go down. She's been delirious all day, shouting the same name. Luke, Luke. Who is he? Probably her husband, replied the old woman. Who are you? Where am I? Dina asked, gathering her strength, and then coughed again. Oh, dear, if it weren't for my mallow, you would have died of cold, explained the elderly woman. It's as if he knew someone needed help in the forest. He went to check his traps in the morning and found you. You were lying unconscious on the ground. You were very frozen. I don't know if I can get you back on your feet. There's no paramedic in the village. Dina looked at her savior and smiled. The gray-haired old man with a beard and thick eyebrows looked at her with a kind gaze and smiled too. We were not blessed with children. Mollo and I have been living together for 60 years, but we've never seen anything like this. What happened to you? What's your name? What were you doing in the forest? And how did you end up there? The old woman asked, touching the girl's forehead. Dina told her kind saviors everything that had happened to her. Every word was a struggle for her. Her throat hurt, and the cough didn't give her a break. After hearing the girl's story, the elderly couple sat in silence for a while, pondering something. Here's the thing, dear. It's dangerous for you to show yourself to people now. Of course, Manny and I understand even less than you why your husband decided to do this to you. But you are in great danger. If those people find you, we won't be able to help you. You need to recover, come to your senses, and only then we'll think about what to do next. You're right, Mullo. That's exactly what we'll do, agreed the old woman and left the room. A minute later, she returned with a cup of aromatic chicken broth. She fed Dina herself and carefully covered her with a blanket. At that moment, Dina felt better than ever. She knew she was completely safe. The girl fell asleep and slept until the morning. Dina woke up early in the morning, hearing an unusual noise. It took her a few minutes to realize that the elderly couple was busy in the kitchen. Marlo was kindling the fireplace, and Manny was preparing breakfast. The hosts of the house were unaware that the girl was no longer asleep, so Dina became an involuntary witness to their conversation. "Oh, Marlo, I didn't sleep all night. The story of Dina just won't leave my mind. I feel there's something unpleasant about it. Her husband will do everything to find her. If he couldn't kill her the first time, he'll try again," Manny said. "Of course, don't doubt it. He'll be looking for her, probably organizing a search right now. I wonder where this house is from which Dina escaped. Is it far from here?" Marlo pondered. "Who knows? But I'm worried. What if one of the neighbors saw you dragging Dina into the house? They'll come looking for her in the village and immediately point to our house." "I don't think so. It was morning. Dawn was just beginning. Let's hope no one saw me," Marlo replied. "Hope, but always be cautious. In our village, the best remedy for boredom is gossip and observing the lives of neighbors," Manny said anxiously. "You're right," sighed the old man and left. Dina lay silently on the bed, thinking that she couldn't be causing so many problems for these wonderful old people. But everything that was happening to her seemed to be beyond her control. The girl realized that she didn't want anything to do with Luke. Did she still love him? Dina tried not to think about it. The only thing she was sure of now was not to be a burden to anyone and to try to return to her old life. However, she couldn't figure out how to do that. Several days passed, and Dina gradually recovered. Manny treated her with various herbs. The girl began to get used to the hosts of the house. Sometimes it felt like they were her own grandparents. Everything seemed to be going in its own way, except for one incident. One day, a neighbor entered the house. Even without knowing what this woman looked like, Dina knew it was the neighbor and the main gossip monger in the village. "Manny, Marlo, are you home?" the neighbor asked. It was a good thing that the homeowner always closed the curtains around the girl's bed, just in case. Otherwise, the curious woman would have instantly spotted the stranger and spread rumors far beyond the village. "Is that you, Betty?" Manny exclaimed. "Why did you come so late? I wanted to tell you the latest news." "You, as usual, know nothing," said Betty. "Speak up. What happened again that made you run to us yourself?" Manny, a bit nervous, asked, glancing towards Dina's bed. "Something happened in the village today. An hour ago, people arrived in a big black Jeep. They jumped out of the car and started questioning everyone, asking if anyone had seen a 28-year-old girl. According to the descriptions, a beautiful girl. They say she got seriously ill, lost her memory, and stopped understanding what she's saying. Apparently, she ran into the woods. They've been looking for her for a few days, but can't find her, dead or alive. That's the situation," the woman explained. "Why did you come to us then?" Manny asked. "We live quietly, haven't seen any girls, don't know anything, and don't want to know." "Well, it's interesting. Such people rarely appear in our area," Betty said, glancing at the curtains. "And you, Manny, did you rearrange the furniture in the house or something?" Curtained off the bed. "Well, I did. So what?" replied the old woman. "Come on, Betty, go home. Marlo and I aren't feeling well," Manny said, not knowing how to get the curious neighbor out of the house, especially since she noticed how Betty looked with interest at the curtains, which hadn't been in the house before. Noticing that the homeowners weren't inclined to chat with her for long, Betty left the house, still keeping an eye on the corner where Dina was hiding. During the conversation between the two women, Marlo sat in a chair and remained silent. As soon as Betty left, he immediately got up and paced from corner to corner. "It's not good, Manny. I've known Betty for many years. She suspects something. And you, honestly, are a bad actress. She noticed how you got nervous when she mentioned the curtains. The old man said, "So what? Curtains are just curtains." Maddie shrugged. She might tell these newcomers about her suspicions. And they won't keep us waiting long. They'll quickly come to us for an inspection. We won't be able to handle them. The old man said, "What should we do in that case? How do we save our girl?" Maddie worried. "For now, nothing. Early in the morning, I'll take Dina to my brother's." The old man said, "I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble." Dina said quietly, "I'll never forget your kindness." Night fell unnoticed. The elderly couple went to bed early in their small home, where they had lived their entire lives. They never had children, but they spent their years caring for each other. Now, unexpectedly, they had another concern. The girl had become almost like family to them. None of the residents of the house were entirely sure if Betty would indeed share her suspicions about the missing girl with the arriving men. However, exactly at midnight, someone knocked on the door. Mollo didn't want to open it, but the old door didn't stop two massive men. They knocked the door down with one blow, and Mollo rushed in upon hearing the noise. The unwelcome guests pushed the host, and the old man fell to the floor, hitting his head on the corner of the cupboard. Stepping over him, the men approached the bed where Dina lay, lifted her up, and carried her out of the house. The last thing the girl heard were the loud cries of the old woman over her husband's body. Dina lay on the back seat of a large black car, her hands tied behind her back, not knowing where they were taking her and how long she had left to live. The men turned up the music to full volume and chatted about something. Dina couldn't understand their conversation. She heard only laughter and foul language. Over the past while, she had lost track of time. The severe illness had weakened her. There was still no strength. To calm herself a bit, she began to remember her relatives, Aunt Miller, Uncle Bruce, and Sister Brooke. How long had it been since she saw them? They probably can't stand not knowing where she is, whether she's alive. And poor Mollo. What did he suffer for? These bastards killed him without flinching. He's innocent. They could have just taken me without hurting the old couple. Bastards. Why does Luke hate me so much and want to get rid of me? She thought. I wonder where they will take me. Most likely to a place that only Luke knows. Feeling the car starting to turn, Dina tensed up. All right, we're here. Get out of the car. One of the big guys ordered, opening the car door. Dina tried to get up, attempted to exit the car on her own, but couldn't. Her head started spinning again. A cough started, and a shiver ran through her body. It was cold outside, and she was only in a light pajama. Listen, Simon. Looks like she can't manage on her own. Grab her and drag her into the house, the man said. In less than a minute, Dina found herself again in the familiar room. It was here that she woke up after Dolores treated her to the strange coffee. From here, she fled into the woods, where she almost perished if Mollo hadn't found her. Get your hands off me, scoundrels. Why did you kill the old man? What did he do to you? She shouted. Don't worry. You'll see him soon. You don't have much time left either. One of the men replied and laughed loudly. Dina realized that she was in the hands of people for whom human life meant nothing. Having calmed down a bit, she approached the window and found that they had installed bars on it. There was no way she could escape through it. Dina returned to her place and resignedly lay down on the bed. Morning came unnoticed. When the girl woke up, the room was already bright. Perhaps this is the last day of my life, Dina thought. I wonder what today's date is and what day of the week it is. Are you awake, dear? An unfamiliar male voice made Dina snap out of her thoughts, and she turned around. Dina, how are you feeling? Are you making fun of me? How do you think I'm feeling? She asked the stranger, turning away from him. Don't behave like that. Perhaps you still have a chance to stay alive. Of course, if you'll be a good girl and do everything as we command, the man said quietly, approaching closer. What are you talking about? What do you mean? I want to see my husband. Bring him to me. Let him look me in the eyes. If he has the courage, Dina said, everything will happen, but in due time. Anyway, you won't have to wait long. Are you hungry? I'll have them bring you breakfast. The stranger offered. Water. I want a drink, Dina replied. Looking at the man, it seemed to her that he was trying not to look her in the eyes, constantly averting his gaze, as if feeling awkward in her presence. Okay, I'll bring you water right away, he agreed and disappeared behind the door. In a minute, he brought a small jug filled with water and a glass. When Dina was alone, she poured the water and looked at it as if trying to determine whether it was safe to drink. I hope it's not poisoned, she thought, and drank the entire glass in one gulp. Night fell, and the room became dark. She spent the whole day alone. No one, except the stranger, entered her room. As always, Dina didn't know how much time had passed and walked around the room from corner to corner. The bars on the windows and the door left no chance of escape. The house was quiet. About half an hour later, Dina heard unfamiliar sounds of struggle. A few minutes later, the lock on the door turned, and someone entered the room. Don't be afraid, Dina. I came to save you. Don't say a word. Just follow me, the stranger whispered. For some reason, Dina felt that his voice was familiar. She took the man's hand and ran out of the house. On the side of the road, she noticed an old car. The man gestured for her to sit in the back seat, took the wheel, and started the engine. They hadn't driven even a kilometer when a pursuit began. Done. How could they track us so quickly? Could there still be cameras in the house? The savior said and pressed on the gas. The road was empty at night, and there were almost no oncoming cars. Dina looked at the speedometer and realized that they were driving at an incredible speed. Dina, if they are armed, they might start shooting, the man warned. Get down and try not to expose yourself. Dina did everything as she was told. She lay quietly on the seat, listening to the screeching of tires and the roar of the engine. Suddenly, the girl felt the car sharply braking. A massive truck appeared right in front of them on the road. Their car was heading straight under its wheels, leaving no chance of survival. To avoid witnessing this horror, Dina bent down to the seat, closed her eyes, and awaited her death in horror. That's the way to go, old lady, the man said, patting the car's dashboard. Dina raised her head and looked ahead. There was no truck on the road. It remained behind them. Miraculously, they had managed to get ahead, and the pursuing car ended up under the wheels of the truck. You're lucky, Dina. We managed to shake off your pursuers. Endure a little more. We'll be there soon, the man said. About an hour later, they parked near a small house. The man stopped the car, took a bag from the trunk, and escorted the girl to the entrance. Come on, Dina, don't be afraid. Now you are completely safe. No one will think of looking for you here. In the morning, I'll move the car from this place, he said, smiling. Only now did Dina confirm that her savior was the same man who had kindly given her vitamins and wanted to help even before her escape into the forest. Who are you? She timidly asked. Why are you helping me? I don't understand anything. Hold on. Soon, everything will become clear to you. But for now, we need to get to the 14th apartment on the second floor, the man replied and opened the entrance door in front of the girl. The apartment where the girl found herself was small and very cozy. It was evident that no one had lived in it for a long time. But even so, Dina liked it. Surprisingly, there was food in the refrigerator. The new acquaintance turned on the stove and started making scrambled eggs. Sorry, there's nothing else. The apartment has been empty for a long time. My grandmother used to live here, but she passed away 3 years ago. I planned your rescue, so I bought groceries in advance. I hope you like scrambled eggs. The man asked. Yes, I absolutely love it, Dina said and coughed. Tomorrow, I'll buy the necessary medicine. You need to think about your health. Tell me, How did you manage to get out of the forest without anyone's help? I was chasing after you, but I twisted my ankle and couldn't catch up. He explained. So, it was you running after me back then? Dina exclaimed. I thought it was Luke's people. I was in such terror that thinking about anything else was simply impossible. If not for Molo, I would have been long gone by now. Dina told her savior everything that had happened to her in the forest, the story of her old friend who found her in the clearing and brought her home, Manny, who treated her with herbs and other folk remedies, and Betty neighbor and the two thugs who not only took her from the house but also cruelly killed the old man. I don't know how Manny endured all this. Those old folks loved each other so much, sighed Dina, tears streaming down her face. Yeah, who would believe what you've been through? And all because of whom? Because of that mama's boy, the stranger said angrily, clenching his fists. And I used to think he was a wonderful person, just like his mummy. Please, tell me what you know, Dina said. I'm tired of living without understanding what's happening. I haven't figured everything out yet either. There's still much to find out, replied the man. My name is Nicholas. I own a large construction holding. I started managing it recently after my father stepped back from business and handed everything over to me. He always dreamed that I would replace him as the CEO. I, on the other hand, dreamed of becoming a doctor. I even enrolled in medical school and studied there for 2 years. Fortunately, I realized in time that it was definitely not what I wanted to dedicate my life to. I dropped out and entered the university's law faculty. 2 years later, I concurrently started studying economics. Studying came easy to me. So now I have 2 diplomas, lawyer and economist. Awesome. How old are you? Could we have crossed paths somewhere? Your face seems familiar to me, Dina asked. I'm 30. Maybe we could have, but apparently, the right moment for a meeting hadn't come then. I want to confess something to you. I've dated many girls, but all they wanted from me was one thing: my money and fame. That's why Kamala Dixon caught my interest. Mrs. Dixon. You? But how is that possible? The girl exclaimed. Dina, do you love your husband very much? Nicholas asked an unexpected question. Love? That was the main mistake of my life. How this story will end is still unknown. But now I can firmly say that there's nothing left of love. Not even hatred. Only pity and disgust. Dina replied. I realized that at your wedding. You loved Luke so much that you didn't notice anything around. And even then, I understood that I liked you. Nicholas confessed. At the wedding. At our wedding with Luke. Dina wondered. But how? You have a friend, Nicole Bryce. I came to the wedding with her. He answered. So you are the Nicholas Rogers that Mrs. Dixon told us about. The girl guessed. Yes, I'm the one. But you only saw your husband in front of you, not noticing any guests or what was happening around. I often approached you, trying to give a compliment. Nicole, one of those women they call hunters of wealthy men. Not getting anything from Luke, she set her sights on me. I can't stand easy women, so I never took her seriously. I came to the wedding with her just to prove to Kamala that she had no chance of being with me. It seemed like everyone was satisfied. Nicole showed her tormentors that she could charm a wealthier man. I hinted to Kamala that I had no intention of having any relationship with her. But it turned out not to be as simple as it looked from the outside. I just didn't know how devious your husband could be. And I've known him since our college days. So, Mrs. Dixon hinted at a relationship with you. The girl continued asking questions. Yes, she knows she can charm men. At 52, she looks fantastic. She has many partners who dream of being with her as a husband or lover. But she's not as simple as she may seem. Think about how she managed to build her business and become one of the most influential women in the city in just a few years. Yes, this woman is smart and has all the qualities needed for running a business. But she knows how to use men just as well. Yes, Luke told me that his mother kicked his father out, considering him not strong and ambitious enough. He never communicated with his father because she supposedly feared that her son would turn out the same. Dina said, "What a great father Luke has. He works as an engineer at the factory. Look at how she raised her precious son." "Dina, haven't you noticed their relationship?" Luke still clings to her apron strings, afraid to take a single step independently. If Kamala ever hands over her empire to Luke, he'll probably ruin it within a year. He's more advanced in charming women. But here's what I don't understand: why did he choose you as his wife? "Well, no, I understand now why you caught his eye," Nicholas said, looking at the girl, curious to hear why. "Do you think I'm not attractive enough for Luke?" asked Dina. "What does that have to do with anything? Stop considering yourself unattractive. You're beautiful, Dina. Also, very homely, hardworking, and modest." Kamala got tired of dealing with her son's constant drinking binges. So, she decided to marry him to you. "Agree. A better candidate for this role could not be found," speculated Nicholas. "Yes, I agree with that. She herself told me those exact words more than once." "How did you find me in the country house?" Dina asked. "It's simple. Luke and I are friends. We often spend time in that house. Did you notice how unusually furnished the house you were brought to was?" he asked. "Yes, I've never seen anything like it. Except maybe in the movies," the girl replied. "These are all my father's whims. I don't know where he got such a passion for antique items, but he designed the house himself. Luke knew I was leaving for a conference and wouldn't be home for a week. So, he decided to take advantage of it. But my trip was cancelled, and the first thing I did after returning was go to that house. I entered the house just at the moment when they were carrying you out of the study into the adjacent room. Realizing that something terrible was happening in the house, I hid and observed everything. No one knew that there was a small annex in the garden from where you could monitor the house. There's even a pair of binoculars there. Just aim it at the windows, and you can see everything happening in the rooms. The next day, they moved you to the forest house. I don't know exactly who it belongs to, but 4 people were involved in all the affairs. Luke himself, the girl, and 2 other men. I don't know who they are, but apparently, Luke pays them well since they unquestioningly follow all his orders. Now we just need to find out why Luke wanted to get rid of me so soon." Dina pondered. "And I also need to call my aunt so she doesn't worry about me." "That's something you shouldn't do," Nicholas warned. "You don't realize who these people are. We'll have to figure it all out. For now, let your loved ones remain unaware. It's for your own safety." "Understood," nodded Dina. "How did you find me in the forest house?" "It's simple," Nicholas smiled. "When I saw them taking you out of the house and loading you into the black Jeep, I sneaked into the garage where our gardener's old car was parked. I started it and followed the Jeep. I watched the house for a day. I even managed to get close to you and administer a few shots into your vein. I infiltrated the house under the guise of a plumber, hearing that there was a need to fix a plumbing faucet. One of the men was in the yard, calling the plumbing service. I immediately seized the opportunity and entered the house. Later, I overheard Luke calling the woman, telling her he would arrive soon. So, under the pretext of urgently buying necessary parts, I had to leave the house area. I intended to reach you by 7 p.m. through the window, but I miscalculated. Your guards realized that the so-called plumber was not who he claimed to be and set up security. A man patrolled around the house almost all night, and I had no opportunity to get to you. But by morning, he fell asleep. I was just about to approach the fence when I saw a shadow flicker towards the forest. Suspecting it was you, I ran after you. And then you already know what happened. So, if it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't be alive now. I don't understand what held those 3 back. Why didn't they kill me right away?" Dina wondered. "That's what we need to find out," Nicholas replied. It was already 3 in the morning when they decided to go to sleep. As she lay on the bed and smelled the clean bed linen, she remembered her Aunt Miller and Uncle Bruce's home. Falling asleep, she thought about her family and realized how much she missed them. The day began at 9 in the morning. Dina woke up and smelled coffee. After washing up, she went to the kitchen, where the table was already set with fresh croissants and coffee. It had been a long time since she had breakfasted like this. "Good morning," Nicholas said. "You already look a bit better. Today, I'll buy some pills. I think you won't recover without them." Dina nodded in agreement and took a bite of the fragrant pastry. It's delicious," she said. "I almost forgot the taste of coffee. Manny used to treat me to herbal tea every day. I wonder how she's doing there." "Don't worry. When we sort everything out, we'll definitely visit her. It's not safe to show up there now," Nicholas warned. "I'll leave for a short while. Park the car, go to work, and I've got a certain idea, but I won't tell you anything yet. I hope it works out." After saying goodbye to Dina, Nicholas left the apartment and was absent until the evening. Dina spent the whole day restless, tidying up the apartment, but the illness took its toll. After an hour, she felt exhausted and lay down to rest. Thoughts of her family, Manny, and Molo lingered in her mind. "I wish I could hug them all soon," she thought. "I hope all of this ends soon." Nicholas returned around 7 p.m. To Dina's surprise, he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a young man in uniform. "Meet Dina. This is my old friend, Keenan Wayans, a police officer. I told him about you, and Keenan agreed to look into your case," Nicholas said. "Good evening." Keenan greeted the girl, extending his hand. Very pleased to meet such a charming lady. The evening passed carefree. Keenan turned out to be talkative, questioning Dina about everything that had happened. After comparing all the available facts, he decided to start the investigation with Mrs. Dixon. 3 days passed. Nicholas went to work. Keenan delved into the investigation, and Dina stayed cooped up in the apartment, recovering and reading books. One evening, the girl decided to ask Nicholas another question that had been on her mind. "Nicholas, I've been wanting to ask you for a long time, but I couldn't gather the courage," she began. "Ask away. I'm ready for anything," Nicholas said. "I just want to know what happened with Nicole. As far as I know, you were together, and she had serious plans regarding you." "Ah, you're talking about that," Nicholas smiled. "Maybe she did, but I didn't. Of course, she's a pretty girl, but she's not cut out for family and serious relationships. We broke up after she hinted that the bracelet I gave her wasn't expensive enough. I just told her it was over and that I didn't want to continue our relationship." "Don't you think that's cruel?" Dina asked. "How did she react to it?" "As usual. She argued, insulted, packed her bags, and left. Our relationship was doomed from the start. I see a completely different woman by my side. Someone like you," he unexpectedly replied, pulling Dina closer. The girl didn't resist. She had long realized that she liked Nicholas. In Nicholas, she saw not only an attractive man but also a strong, honest man whom she could lean on and trust in difficult times. It was something she had never felt towards her husband. "Will you marry me?" Nicholas asked, waking up next to Dina in the morning. "I promise to make you the happiest woman." Dina smiled and silently nodded. "Don't forget, before marrying you, I still need to get a divorce," she reminded her beloved. It was 7 in the morning. Nicholas started getting ready for work, and Dina prepared breakfast. A phone call interrupted their usual morning routine. It was Keenan, informing them that he had something to share and promising to stop by closer to the evening. Dina eagerly awaited Nicholas's return. He came back at 7, while Keenan showed up at 9. "Well, finally. We were starting to worry," Nicholas said, greeting the police officer. "I had to deal with the Dixons all night. Only this morning did I conclude this case," Keenan mysteriously announced. Dina poured tea. She could barely contain her curiosity, causing her hands to shake and her voice to become hoarse. "Dina, Do you realize what a mistake you made by marrying your husband? Keenan asked. Now, I'm absolutely certain about that, Dina replied. So, here's what I wanted to say. Your buddy Luke turned out to be not only vile but also a coward. But the main actor in this story wasn't Luke. It was his mother. You already know Camilla's goal in marrying her son to you. Tired of her son's constant drinking and partying, she hoped that after his marriage, she could calm him down and live peacefully. She understood that, at 30, her son should be more serious and aware of the legacy she would leave for him. But time passed, and Luke remained just as immature and irresponsible. The woman's hopes were dashed by her future daughter-in-law. Dina unquestioningly fulfilled any whims of her husband, which he took advantage of. Luke didn't love Dina. He was seeing other women even before the wedding. I'm sorry, Dina, but it's the truth, and you need to know it. That's okay. I'm ready for any truth, Dina replied. So, realizing that family life had no effect on her son, the woman began to think about what else to do to avoid losing him entirely. It was at this time that she developed business relations with the well-known banker George Montalban. He was already an elderly man with a much younger wife. So, Camilla quickly understood that there was no room next to the money bag. But she soon found out that the financier had a daughter about the same age as Luke. She wasted no time and introduced the young people. Luke wasn't impressed, but Kelly immediately fell for him and told her father that she wanted to marry him. They had no idea that Luke Dixon was already married. Understanding that everything went as she wanted, Camilla convinces her son to divorce his wife, but then Kelly calls and says she wants to marry Luke in a month. Montalban promises lucrative financial assistance to Camilla's company in case of marriage and children. Any other person would have waited for the divorce and only then pursued other matters, but not Camilla. The woman decides to ruthlessly get rid of her future daughter-in-law and free her son. She persuades Luke to poison his wife and hide her in the nearby forest, announcing to everyone that Dina left the house in an unknown direction. Mrs. Dixon knows no bounds in achieving her goals. Dina was just a means to educate her son, and after meeting Montalban, the girl became a regular obstacle that needed to be urgently eliminated. Oh my God, I would have never thought she was capable of such things, Dina exclaimed, wiping away tears. Yes, she naively believed that Luke would be so eager to marry Kelly that he would quickly do whatever was required of him. To achieve her plan, Camilla involved 4 more people in the scheme. A girl named Katie, who posed as Dolores, and 2 other criminals. Katie played her role brilliantly but made a mistake with the drug dosage. Seeing you barely alive, Luke got scared and began to rethink his actions. The criminals were waiting for his next order, but he hesitated, contemplating what to do next. Meanwhile, he was already discussing their future wedding with Kelly. In this case, Dina, once again, Luke Dixon's cowardice saved you. Of course, if it weren't for Nicholas, you would hardly have escaped from those people in the old car and survived. I still wonder how you managed to evade those 2 criminals and avoid tragedy. I can only say that you are lucky. And for your pursuers, it was their final act. They died on the spot, crashing into a truck that was coming onto the road. After listening to Keenan's story, Dina took a long time to come to her senses. She recalled all the events of the past month, trying to connect one thought to another. There was no room for doubt. Everything Keenan had told her was the unvarnished truth. And where is Luke now? She finally managed to ask. In prison, along with his accomplices. Camilla Dixon is in the neighboring cell, along with Katie Dolores. Last night, I finalized all the paperwork, realizing that there was no escaping justice for her. Dixon confessed to all her crimes, and Luke followed his mother's example. So, now I can go out without fear and visit my relatives. The girl rejoiced. Yes, do it tomorrow. I've seen your aunt several times. For your safety, they haven't informed her that you're alive, Keenan explained. The home of Aunt Miller and Uncle Bruce seemed so familiar to Dina after the long separation that tears welled up in her eyes. Oh God, how often I thought about this place while life tested my strength, she whispered, holding onto Nicholas's hand. Dina and Nicholas hadn't reached the doorstep when Miller rushed towards them. The woman burst into tears of joy. Dina, my girl, you're alive. If only you knew how I prayed to God for you to come back alive and well. Bruce was only discharged from the hospital a week ago. He had a pre-heart attack condition. I was worried about him too. But now, everything is behind us. We just need to warn him that you're alive and back home. Who knows how he'll react to your return? The woman said, not believing her eyes. How will he react? I'll be happy to hug my girl, said Uncle Bruce. Bruce's voice made everyone turn towards the porch. The elderly man stood on the top step, reaching out his hands to Dina. Dina, come to me, or else I won't believe you've returned. Dina hugged her uncle, only then remembering that she hadn't introduced Nicholas to her family. Uncle, aunt, meet Nicholas Rogers, the man thanks to whom I'm standing here before you, alive and well, the girl announced. He's a wonderful person. Miller and Bruce greeted the young man and invited Dina and Nicholas into the house. Dina couldn't imagine what surprise awaited her inside. In the kitchen, Dina met her sister. Brooke held a little bundle in her arms. Upon closer inspection, Dina realized her younger sister was holding a newborn baby. Brooke, did you give birth? She asked, approaching her sister, who guiltily looked at Dina, not knowing what to say. Don't be silent, Brooke. Dina has the right to know everything. Miller addressed Brooke. Left alone with her older sister, Brooke burst into tears and couldn't calm down for a long time. Forgive me, Dina, if you can. I betrayed you. Luke was cheating on you with me even before your wedding. He swore love to me, said he would never leave. I fell in love with him and suffered because of it. The scoundrel just played with me. During your wedding, I already knew I was pregnant. Due to constant stress, I started bleeding. I begged the doctors not to tell the relatives the real reasons for my condition. The term was short, and I even considered having an abortion. But when I came to my senses, I realized I would give birth to this child. I left the city, deceiving everyone. I got a job, but had to quit my studies. The pregnancy was difficult. I gave birth to Artie a month earlier than expected. I came home right after being discharged from the maternity hospital. Aunt had a hard time alone while Uncle was in the hospital. Of course, I may not be of much use now, but there is so much joy from the baby. Uncle visibly rejuvenates when he holds him. Oh God, Brooke, how much you had to go through. This Luke rattled the nerves not only for me, but for our whole family. But it's good that we're all together again, and we have a little boy. I can't wait to look at him. Brooke, if you think about it, Luke himself didn't understand what a gift he made for all of us. Don't worry, you'll meet your destiny, and the child won't be an obstacle. Dina reassured her sister. Does Luke know he has a son? He knows. He knew about my pregnancy even before your wedding. He told his mother everything. You don't know, but Kamala came to the hospital and insisted that I have an abortion. She offered money. Looking at her, I realized that nothing would stop this woman if she set her mind to something. So I agreed to her conditions, but took no money. I just disappeared from your life and the Dixon family's life. Who knows what that crazy woman would have done against me if she found out I kept the baby. The evening passed unnoticed. Dina got acquainted with her nephew and was happy that a baby had appeared in their family. No one cared that it was Luke's son. Brooke, most importantly, raise him like a real man, so he won't resemble his father, Nicholas advised. In the morning, Nicholas and Dina woke up earlier than everyone else and started getting ready to leave. Where are you going so early? Miller wondered, rubbing her eyes after waking up. We need to visit Manny. I told you about her yesterday. And Mollo too. They are also my guardian angels. I keep thinking about how she's doing there, Dina explained. Christmas is coming soon, and I want to bring Manny to the city. Aunt, she lives in such awful conditions. The old lady shouldn't be left alone in the village. 15 minutes later, Nicholas's car pulled out. On the way, Dina remembered the warmth with which the elderly couple treated her and felt melancholy. Nicholas, on the other hand, was cheerful, joking, and trying to cheer up Dina. When they approached Manny and Mollo's home, Dina felt like her heart would jump out of her chest from excitement. She approached the porch slowly and immediately noticed that the old floor had been replaced with a new one, and it no longer creaked as it used to. "Manny, how are you here alone? Managing?" Dina asked, seeing the old woman. Dina approached the elderly woman, hugged her, and started crying. Forgive me for everything. I became the cause of your unhappiness," she repeated, kissing Manny on the cheek. "And will you hug me too?" Mollo's voice made the girl startle. She never expected to see the old man. Dina was sure he had perished that night when two men broke into the house. "Mollo, you're alive. I fought. Dina couldn't say another word. Tears of joy streamed down her face. She stood up, approached the old man, and embraced him tightly. "Don't cry, dear. Manny got me back on my feet. The main thing is, you're alive and well, and many thanks to your friend. He fixed the floors and the fireplace for us. Now we live with Manny like a king and queen," Mollo said, shaking hands with Nicholas. "What's this, Nicholas? You knew everything and didn't tell me anything." The girl wondered. "I didn't want to spoil the impression of your first meeting." Nicholas smiled and winked at Mollo. The entire extended family gathered around the Christmas table. Bruce, Miller, Brooke with little Artie, Dina, Nicholas, Mollo, Manny, and Keenan Weans. Dina sat next to her beloved, unable to believe that she was surrounded by the dearest and closest people, for whose happiness she would give up so much. They all had to endure many trials, but they emerged from them with dignity, looking at life in a new light and valuing each other more. When little Artie started crying, Keenan was the first to approach Brooke and offer his help, and Dina realized that her sister's happiness was close by.